Chapter 755. More than a dozen figures, men and women, looked like a group of rogue cultivators, followed by an old man with a compass at the front, flying on their swords. Among these people, the worst one was also at the peak of the Jedon stage. 7 or 8 masters at the peak of the Jedon stage, plus 7 or 8 masters at the early and middle stages of the Yuanying stage, each holding a golden ball in his left hand, and his right hand was a variety of magic weapons. He is flying in this direction. As soon as we meet him, trap him with a twisted golden net and kill him immediately. The old man in front looked at the compass and seemed to be estimating the change in the distance from Yang Chen, and ordered. Everyone spread out, the guy's flying magic weapon is very fast, I am afraid 1 or 2 twisted golden nets can't trap him. The old man attached great importance to this action and kept saying, on the sea, he may have a unique trump card, so this time on the ground. Once any twisted golden net works, immediately trap him with a formation and kill him. Show no mercy. The men and women behind him seemed to be used to his nagging. No one said anything, not even a sound of agreement. They just spread out tacitly, basically covering all directions. Quick, hide. After a while, the old man looked at the compass and suddenly ordered. A group of men and women flashed with a ray of light, and then the figures disappeared in the air one by one, as if they had never appeared. The robes on each of them were specially refined and could activate a stealth formation to hide the owner. Yang Chen's shuttle soon appeared on the horizon, drawing a thin line in the air with almost no trace, and came close. Then, under the puzzled gaze of a group of people in the dark, it suddenly stopped. The shuttle flashed, and Yang Chen's figure appeared in the air, holding the blood phantom vine flying sword in his hand, looking coldly in front of him. Do it! Yang Chen's behavior obviously showed that he had found something. The old man did not go to investigate where he had exposed himself, and decisively ordered to start. Pung pung pung, a series of sounds sounded, and in several directions of Yang Chen, a large golden net burst. With unparalleled speed, the huge net quickly wrapped around Yang Chen's body. Yang Chen only glanced at them. Facing the dozen or so golden nets, his body did not move at all, allowing the nets to wrap around him tightly from all directions. They did not expect such a result at all. After the group of male and female masters threw the golden ball of the twisted gold net, they all thought that Yang Chen would dodge, and each of them made a response to dodge. However, after the group of people was done, they were shocked to find that Yang Chen did not move at all. This made their previous response very comical. But no matter what, the people who did it were still secretly delighted. No one knew the power of these twisted gold nets better than them. As long as one was entangled by the twisted gold nets, even a high-speed flying sword without the sharpness of a magic weapon would not be able to get rid of it. It would only become tighter and tighter, and eventually, one would lose the ability to move. 1 or 2 might have to worry about some magic weapons, but if more than a dozen of them were entangled, even if it was a master of the Deshang stage, they would have to be obediently tied up. The twisted gold net was not only a strong big net, the barbs on it and the poison on the barbs were enough to send the masters of the Deshang stage to the underworld. The blow was effective, and everyone was secretly happy. Although they didn't know why Yang Chen would suddenly put away the shuttle at this time, they didn't care what reason Yang Chen had. What they wanted was to kill Yang Chen cleanly, as long as they did so. Even if more than a dozen twisted gold nets were enough to kill Yang Chen, none of these people hesitated. All the magic weapons in their hands flew out and smashed towards Yang Chen's head. As long as the person died, it would be a waste. However, when everyone was smashing their magic weapons and they were also flying up, they suddenly heard the voice of Yang Chen. I am very unhappy now, but thank you for coming to my door to let me vent my anger. Yang Chen's voice was full of killing intent, followed by a sentence, every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor. After the words, Yang Chen had not finished completely, a series of magic weapons had been smashed down. On the surface of Yang Chen's body, the golden light flashed slightly. Everyone didn't seem to see the difference between this golden light and the golden light of the twisted gold net, but they heard a dull bell sound. Buzz, the long and low bell sound, with a power to penetrate the soul, penetrated into everyone's sea of consciousness. Everyone seemed to hear the sound of the golden bell ringing in their ears, and then a few guys with weak spiritual awareness directly fainted and fell from the air. Originally, Yang Chen thought that everyone would be stunned by the golden bell, but the old man miraculously remained awake. But even so, there was a glint of horror in his eyes. Then, it became a kind of cutting off the means of retreat. The whole body turned into a streamer. The tip of the streamer flashed a hint of silver, flying toward Yang Chen's heart. Hey, a slight sound like a sharp blade cutting through tofu. Yang Chen's arm was lifted easily. Originally wrapped in Yang Chen's body, everyone thought that the dozens of twisted gold nets, under the blade of Xiao Tian's blood demon vine flying sword, were as fragile as a few pieces of paper, easily broken. Yang Chen's right hand raised the blood demon vine flying sword high, and slammed down at the old man's figure. Ding, a sound of metal collision. The streamer first hit Yang Chen's chest, but only brought such a crisp sound. There was no other effect. Yang Chen's flying sword directly divided the old man's figure into two pieces. Before the two pieces of the corpse fell to the ground, it had become a dry appearance. The dozen or so guys who fainted, Yang Chen, as before, sealed their five senses and threw them into the dome hall. These people were definitely the periphery of the Taishaman. Through them, Yang Chen could find more hidden people of the Taishaman. After cleaning up these killers, Yang Chen threw the seized things into the mouth of Xiao Tian and let it clean up the spiritual awareness imprints that may be left. Only one was killed, which made Yang Chen very unsatisfied. He knew that he would not use the golden bell to stun them. The more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable he was. He couldn't help but throw the spiritual awareness imprint of the blood river in his sea of consciousness into the blood river again. The young sect master Li Liheng, who had just woken up, had just sent away the sect master and several elders. He was taking a rest under the service of the servants. He was about to get up and do something. Suddenly, the feeling of horror came again. Li Liheng only had time to scream and once again softly collapsed on the ground. Chapter 756. The Taishaman didn't know what kind of bad luck they had. Because of the secret plane, there were heavy casualties here, and they didn't know how to settle them for a while. The young sect master over there was in a coma for a few days, which almost made the high-level people worried. The young sect master Li Liheng, of course, knew his importance. He was in a coma for no reason, and he couldn't wake up no matter how hard he tried. If there was a problem, for the Taishaman, it was simply one less future pillar. Even those who didn't know were guessing that the illegitimate son of the sect master was in trouble. Some flattered, some secretly snickered, and so on. Anyway, their minds were not used on the business. Li Liheng's coma was indeed a head-scratcher, and there was no reason at all. As for Li Liheng himself, how could he think that a spiritual awareness mark he had thrown out would make him suffer such consequences? It's not that Li Liheng couldn't think of it, it's just that his cultivation method was special. So far, he has thrown out no less than thousands of spiritual awareness marks. Each mark could be tracked by a unique compass, and it was not easy to be discovered by the person who planted the spiritual awareness mark. This was originally the secret weapon of the Taishaman. Who could have thought that someone would be like Yang Chen, not only find his spiritual awareness mark, but also use this spiritual awareness mark to deal with him. Even if everyone asked Li Liheng how he felt, Li Liheng could only briefly describe the horror of that moment. It was as if he was in a sea of blood, and then he would faint immediately. Even if he woke up, Li Liheng would involuntarily tremble with fear. The fear at the moment before he fainted made him almost have an instinctive fear. It seemed that as long as others mentioned it, he would tremble involuntarily. A young sect master with a great future suddenly became like this. Several elders who knew about it hated that they could not replace Li Liheng to bear such pain. No one could figure out the reason, and it could only be attributed to the carelessness of his cultivation that led to a heart demon. After all, only 2 people have cultivated this cultivation method before and after. The first master ancestor who created this cultivation method and successfully cultivated it may also have unexpected places that led to deviations in the cultivation of the younger generation. This was the only possible explanation. It was simply impossible for them to believe that a spiritual awareness mark left by a person a few years ago could become a tool to deal with them. Therefore, Li Liheng must have encountered an inner demon during the process of cultivation. Otherwise, why would he feel fear? However, even if the sect master was worried about Li Liheng, he had to just look at him, and after telling him to be careful, he rushed to deal with the matters of the secret plane. There was no other way, the matter in the secret plane was too big. The Taishaman alone had 2 masters of the Deshang stage dead, and 3 were disabled. No one thought that the great danger warned by the secret key turned out to be so dangerous. He thought that the 2 masters of the Deshang stage were already in their hands, but there was still such a big mistake, and the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island took advantage of it. At the thought of this, the Taishaman's hatred for Yang Chun increased by another level. Others didn't know, but the sect master and a group of high-level officials were very clear. After Yang Chun interpreted the secret key, he visited the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect respectively. Although they didn't know what he said, the almost identical performance of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect seemed to have explained many problems. With the oath of the Heart Demon, the Taishaman high-level officials believed that Yang Chun would not disclose the information about the secret key. Moreover, this information was triggered by the formation in Taishaman. Yang Chun did not know and could not know at all. But in any case, they lost so much, but the 2 major sects took advantage of it. This account still had to be calculated after all. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect had to take a long view, but Yang Chun must be removed. Otherwise, if he was allowed to develop, a young 4th-grade alchemist master was definitely a nightmare for the hostile sect. A group of professional killers has been sent to deal with Yang Chun. The rest of the sect masters did not want to care too much about it. For the time being, they had to worry about the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect. After they got the secret plane resources, what kind of threat would they pose to the Taishaman? It must be said that the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect were still very on the road when dealing with certain things. Although at the scene of the secret plane, it was very tough to refute the requirements of the 5 Elements sect and the Qiankuan sect, but after moving things back to the sect, they immediately sent people to contact the 5 Elements sect and the Qiankuan sect. The things obtained in the secret plane, after careful selection, the 2 major sects each took out 5% of them and sent them to the 5 Elements sect and the Qiankuan sect. After all, the other party also lost a master of the Deshang stage. Nothing was really too unreasonable. At the level of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, it was not some small resources that could make them completely put down their morality. After this, half of the resources were sent. The 5 Elements sect and the Qiankuan sect were also unexpected surprises. For the 2 major sects, they were originally connected, and now they were naturally more closely related. The loss of the 2 masters of the Deshang stage was not made by the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect. They could only blame the Taishaman for the formation left in the secret plane that was leaked. With this batch of compensatory resources, the 5 Elements sect and the Qiankuan sect had nothing to say. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Qiankuan sect each got more than 2/5 of the resources, and half of it was only 1/20 of the things. Relative to what they got, it was already a small head. They generously took it out and appeased the 5 Elements sect and the Qiankuan sect, so there was not much loss. Not only that, but they also got more friendship from the 5 Elements sect and the Qiankuan sect. At least in some things, there were more joint support from the two major sects. The Taishamen had always been overbearing, and they were the leaders. The four major sects had vaguely formed a circle of confrontation. On the contrary, the Taishamen also got something, but only 1/5 of it, and they also suffered heavy casualties. If they also learned from the two major sects and took out half of the things, the Taishamen themselves would not be left with much. At this point, it was impossible for them to share the things that their masters had exchanged with others. Even if they have seen the hidden purpose of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect sharing the gains, there was no way to crack it. If they took these resources to win over the Five Elements sect and the Qianquan sect, they didn't have to wait for the enemy to deal with the Taishamen. Those Deshang stage elders who came back alive after the fight would never allow this kind of thing to happen. Maybe the sect master would soon be deposed by the great elders in the greatest heaven sect. The sect master and the elders could only watch things develop in a direction that was not conducive to the Taishamen. There was no way. Chapter 757. In order to win over the Five Elements sect and Qianquan sect, they had to come up with practical benefit. But after taking it out, not only would the sect be chaotic, but if they took less, not only would it not play the role of winning them over, but it would also be looked down upon. After weighing it in this way, they could only watch the four major sects form a small circle. Originally, they were all a little dissatisfied with the Taishamen, and now they had a few more allies to advance and retreat with. Yang Chen did not expect the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect to have such a big hand. Half of the income sounded not much, but it required the lives of several Deshang stage masters to seize things. How could it be so simple? Don't look at the attitude of the Five Elements sect and Qianquan sect. After they got their hands on them, they were almost comparable to the Taishamen sect. This was also good. The greater the strength of the allies, the greater the chance to deal with the enemy. Now it seemed that the Taishamen had become the target of public criticism. Now they had to expand wildly, otherwise they would be united by the four major sects and be squeezed out of the position of the leader of the Dao sections. The more hasty the expansion of strength, the more there would be a situation of good and bad, and naturally there would be some uncontrollable situations, which was what Yang Chen and many people wanted to see. After tossing Li Liheng more than a dozen times in a row, Yang Chen finally arrived within the scope of Meiqing Mountain. However, he did not go back to the mountain directly, but found a secluded place, pulled out one of the captives and threw him on the ground. Closing the five senses, there was no feeling, but there was still consciousness. This was an extremely cruel punishment. No one could support it for too long. The last few guys in the foundation stage had already collapsed in just a few days, and they said whatever they asked. The cultivator's mind was firm, and now this group of assassins was at least in the peak Jedon stage. Compared to the previous group of people, Yang Chen certainly had to spend more time. The guy who was thrown out was a man at the peak Jedon stage. Because his five senses were closed, he was thrown to the ground without any reaction. It was not until Yang Chen removed the restriction that he discovered his situation. After all, he was an expert at the peak of the Jedon realm. To be able to cultivate to this point, it was unknown how many times he had been in seclusion alone for how many years. Although there had been some fatigue, he still did not lose his will. Since I've received benefits from others, I'll be loyal to them. If you want to kill me, do as you please. It seemed that the other party was also a very straightforward killer. In the face of such a situation, he did not panic at all. He just coldly said one sentence, then closed his eyes and did not say anything else. Seeing this situation, Yang Chen did not say anything more. He directly sealed the killer again and threw him back into the dome hall. It could be seen that these were professional assassins who had gone through strict training. Their willpower was incomparably firm. A mere dozen or so days was not enough to make them mentally collapse. From the looks of it, even if it took a little longer, it would not have much of an effect. Some people were born with the ability to endure loneliness. Yang Chen even knew of some extreme people who could hide in an extremely small area for decades without eating or moving. It didn't seem to be easy to get information from these assassins. Yang Chen simply put down his hope. Since the guy said that he had received benefits from others and was loyal to them, maybe he was really a killer who took the bounty. Anyway, the real murderers behind the scenes were nothing more than Taishaman. Yang Chen did not need to have any real evidence now. Moreover, even if there was real evidence, so what? It was impossible for Chunyang Palace to take this evidence to find the Taishaman to reason, and Yang Chen would not expect to be able to reason with the Taishaman. There was no other possibility between the two sides except to fight to the death. It was just that they had not put it on the table yet. Returning to Chunyang Palace, Yang Chen, of course, went to visit his master first. This matter was unshakable. It had not changed since Yang Chen was apprenticed to his master, unless his master was not in the sect. Every time Yang Chen went out, Gao Yu was a little worried. She was happy to see Yang Chen return safe and sound. She asked Yang Chen about his trip. After hearing the performance of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, it seemed that her face was a little strange. It was just that Yang Chen was immersed in the happiness of seeing his master and did not pay too much attention. After visiting his master, he naturally had to see the head of the palace. The consequences of Yang Chen's trip simply made the high-level officials of Chunyang Palace laugh from ear to ear. Was there anything more delightful than watching one's opponent suffer over and over again? It was originally a secret of the Taishaman, but suddenly it became known to the world. Then they finally had the opportunity to rush to the secret plane, but they suffered losses. Finally, they had to be forced to cooperate with several major sects to develop the secret plane, but they only got less than 1/5 of the benefit. The 5 Deshang stage masters of the Taishaman were abolished. After the elders of Chunyang Palace heard the news, they also took a breath of cold air. This was not counting the total of 13 Deshang stage masters of the Green Jade, Immortal Island, Blue Cloud sect, 5 Elements sect and Qiankuan sect. When they decided to give up this secret plane, everyone was still a little distressed. It was just that what Yang Chen said was too shocking. They needed to pay the price of 2 or 3 Deshang stage masters, and the time was tight, so they were forced to hand it over. But now it seems that what Yang Chen said at the time was still conservative. How were these 2 or 3 Deshang stage masters? It was clearly 13. Yang Chen's calculation was indeed a bit conservative. After the Taishaman got the secret plane in his previous life, they were not in a hurry to open it, but carefully prepared for a long time, concentrated their strength, and then opened it a little bit. In the end, they only paid the price of 2 or 3 Deshang stage masters. This was a fact. But this life was completely different, because there were strong competitors, and the Taishaman could not prove that this was the Taishaman's thing, so naturally they could only do it by force. Everyone had the same reason, inadequate preparation, and the loss was far beyond Yang Chen's expectations. When the master of the palace saw Yang Chen, he naturally asked Yang Chen's experience with the elders, which was exactly the same as Gao Yu. This time, there was indeed not too much thrilling, and the results that should be known had already been known. They just needed to confirm that Yang Chen was fine, and everyone quickly dispersed. Yang Chen did not go directly back to his master, but went straight to the law enforcement hall. Elder Meng Xian had just seen Yang Chen, and when he saw that Yang Chen actually came to the law enforcement hall, he was really surprised. "What's the matter?" Meng Xian asked, very surprised. This disciple encountered more than a dozen killers on the way. Yang Chen replied with a slight smile, "They are determined and not easy to yield. This disciple thinks that it is just suitable for you and the law enforcement hall to practice, so I sent them over." With that said, he waved his hand and more than a dozen figures fell on the ground of the law enforcement hall like dumplings. Chapter 758. From these guys' mouths, Yang Chen could not get any news, but it was a bit of a fuss to deal with a few assassins. Since these people have been caught, It was better to let the disciples of Chunyang Palace take advantage of it. Among the assassins, there were several Yuanying stage masters, and the rest were peak Jedon stage masters. Let the law enforcement hall practice. He believed that in the history of the law enforcement hall of Chunyang Palace, there were few opportunities to deal with the Yuanying stage masters. Meng Xian took a breath of cold air on the spot. Such a big move was really unbelievable. Yang Chen understated in front of the head of the palace and the elders that he was assassinated, and then he killed one and captured a few. Everyone thought that it was just a master of the Jedon stage. Who could have thought that there were so many Yuanying stage masters among them? Originally, when they heard Yang Chen say that he killed 6 Yuanying stage masters of Taishimen, everyone had an unreal feeling. Now there were so many Yuanying stage masters in front of them, which was very shocking. With Meng Xian's eyesight, of course, he could see at a glance that these masters were all ruthless people who had been through the test of killing for a long time, otherwise they would not act as assassins. It was just that this time, he didn't know what price the Taishimen had to pay to let this level of master take action. But this also showed that Yang Chen's situation was getting more and more dangerous. Master Uncle, the things on their bodies, this disciple has already searched. Yang Chen did not seem to be aware of the danger at all, and said with a smile, "As for what can be obtained from their mouths, it depends on the ability of the law enforcement hall. This disciple will not greet you." Meng Xian had been in charge of the law enforcement hall for many years, and naturally had his pride. Yang Chen could catch so many masters. If they couldn't even dig out some news from these people, wouldn't it be a great loss of face? Yang Chen said this, but it was a little provocative, and it made Meng Xian's heroic spirit surge. He smiled at Yang Chen and said loudly, "You go, the rest will be handed over to my law enforcement hall. Try not to hurt their lives. If possible, it is also good to let these guys be the target of core disciple training." Yang Chen finally reminded him, and then left with a smile. It was unknown how these people would be treated in the hands of the law enforcement hall. However, this had nothing to do with Yang Chen. Since he had the intention to kill Yang Chen, he had to be prepared to be killed by Yang Chen. They would be lucky if they didn't die. On the contrary, when Meng Xian heard Yang Chen's words, his heart skipped a beat. He stared at the dozen people on the ground thoughtfully. After a long time, he waved his hand and directly rolled up more than a dozen people, and then went directly to the head of the palace. What Yang Chen said was indeed a good idea. With these sparring partners, the actual combat level of the core disciples would greatly increase, and the strength of the sect would similarly increase. This Yang Chen didn't even spare the captives. It seemed that he already had the attitude of a young palace master. Along the way, Meng Xian had a smile on his face. Having such a disciple was the sect's greatest blessing. Yang Chen's spiritual power was condensed into Dan. At this moment, he was in the balance of yin and yang 5 element. In the short term, Yang Chen did not think about breaking through. The right thing to do was to stabilize his current cultivation base. During this time, he could also solve the things that Yang Chen had wanted to put into action for a long time. Gao Yu was now constantly nourishing the dragon horn, scouring it with her own spiritual power and spiritual awareness over and over again. Such years of hard work could make Gao Yu and the dragon horn more and more compatible, and increase the possibility of refining the dragon horn. However, as a Jedon stage master, during the time when Yang Chen went out, Gao Yu accepted another female disciple. But it was not any of the senior sisters in Yang Chen's previous memories. Yang Chen was very surprised, but Gao Yu said with some emotion that she would only accept female disciples in the future, and no male disciples would be accepted. The expression when she spoke made Yang Chen's heart palpitate. Of course, he knew why Gao Yu would do this. It was to not make Yang Chen feel uncomfortable. Although Gao Yu knew that Yang Chen would not care about this, she still took the initiative to do so. Yang Chen was very grateful for his master's kindness. There were only Yang Chen and his master at the scene. Yang Chen also couldn't help but hold his master's slender waist and hold Gao Yu in his arms. You finally planned to take Ling as a concubine? Gao Yu did not resist, but leaned on Yang Chen's arms with great enjoyment and asked with a smile. This time Ling came back, she is very happy. Gong Sun Ling and Gao Yu were now almost like sisters, and nothing was hidden from Gao Yu. During the time when Yang Chen went out, Gong Sunling had told Gao Yu everything that happened to them in the demonic sect. Even the most shameful pretending to be Yang Chen's concubine, and even watching Lady Fanghua's heavenly demons' alluring dance were not concealed. Yang Chen said that after coming back, he would ask his master to marry his master and senior sister, which made Gong Sunling even happier, and she did not hide it from Gao Yu. Therefore, Gao Yu did not resist Yang Chen's intimate action. The relationship between Gao Yu, Gong Sunling and Yang Chen, whether inside or outside the sect, many people understood it. What Yang Chen didn't know was that the reason why Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan would unite was precisely because of Hua Wanting's advice to the two women. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling had joined forces. If Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan still wanted to fight, it would only benefit the two women, and it would not benefit them. On the contrary, they could unite in front of Yang Chen and faintly fight against Gao Yu and Gong Sunling. Master, are you willing to marry me? Yang Chen used a very strange title and said this proposal. Enemy. Gao Yu sighed in a low voice, but her face also flashed a crimson. If I don't want to, how can I let you be so frivolous? Although he already knew that Gao Yu was unlikely to refuse, he was still a little nervous when he really faced this moment. Listening to Gao Yu's voice, Yang Chen was overjoyed. The sudden happiness made him not know what to say. Under the ecstasy, Yang Chen's arms tightened, and then noticed Gao Yu's slightly painful frown. Yang Chen was shocked. He knew how powerful he was after he cultivated the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. He had reached the realm of mountain-picking strength, and he had the power of thousands of jin. Once he heard his master, it would be beyond redemption. Fortunately, Yang Chen subconsciously tightened his arms. Although Gao Yu's delicate body was somewhat unbearable, after all, the body still had some elasticity, and it did not cause any irreparable consequences. You can't let Linger down. Just after Yang Chen took a long breath, Gao Yu suddenly said, Linger also accompanied you through life and death. She is deeply attached to you. If you want to marry, you have to marry her. Chapter 759. Master, I have wronged you. This time, Yang Chen carefully took Gao Yu into his arms again, put his face on the back of Gao Yu's head, smelled the fragrance of Gao Yu's hair, and said apologetically. Gao Yu leaned her head back and completely leaned into Yang Chen's arms, as if she enjoyed this intimate hug. After a while, she whispered, We don't need to say this between us. Although she and Yang Chen had only been a master and apprentice for 100 years, Gao Yu seemed to have lived with Yang Chen for a lifetime. Not to mention the fact that Yang Chen desperately rescued her in the 100,000 mountains. Just those who spoke rudely to Gao Yu were cleaned up by Yang Chen one by one, which made Gao Yu very happy. Between the two, when they first cultivated the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra, the feeling of telepathy has made them unreservedly trust each other. Yang Chen has long had the heart of love, but Gao Yu has already asked herself to be Yang Chen's people, nothing else. In this way, maintaining this posture, the two naturally entered the cultivation of the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra. This time, perhaps because after Yang Chen's proposal, the relationship between the two was completely clear, and there was no need to worry about anything as before, the effect of the cultivation was surprisingly effective. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness seemed to have condensed again. At this point, if he wanted to condense his spiritual awareness in the middle Dashang stage, it was not something that could be solved in 1 or 2 times of cultivation. But for Gao Yu, this time's cultivation was tantamount to a reborn change. Because of the strength of Yang Chen's spiritual awareness cultivation base, It directly led to a large degree of condensation of Gao Yu's spiritual awareness. The spiritual awareness that had already entered the early Yuanying stage, after this double cultivation with Yang Chen, advanced by leaps and bounds, and rushed straight to the peak of the early Yuanying stage. The stronger Gao Yu's spiritual sense was, the more confidence she had in refining her own dragon horn flying sword. Moreover, the strength of the spiritual awareness that had been tempered by Yang Chen was so high that it was simply stunning. Even Gao Yu was wondering if Master Wang Yong's spiritual awareness at the moment was as strong as Yang Chen's. Naturally, Gao Yu would never think that Yang Chen's spiritual awareness at this moment had far surpassed Wang Yong's level. The middle Deshang stage and the early Deshang stage seemed to be only separated by a small realm, but the gap between these two small realms was enough to exceed the early Deshang stage itself. The higher one's cultivation, the greater the gap between each level. Coming out of the state of cultivation, Yang Chen gently turned Gao Yu's body to face him. Looking at Gao Yu, who was also filled with joy, he slowly kissed Gao Yu's trembling red lips. Gao Yu moaned, her eyes closed, lost in the joy of mutual affection, and never wanted to wake up. It wasn't until a long time later that Yang Chen gently let go and looked down at his beloved master, who had never been like this before. "You're not going to find Ling Er, she's probably waiting anxiously." Gao Yu couldn't stand the burning eyes of Yang Chen. She gently punched Yang Chen's chest, then reached out and pushed herself out of Yang Chen's arms. Knowing that his master's face was tender, Yang Chen naturally would not push too hard. Anyway, his master had agreed to marry. There was a long time in the future. In the process of cultivation, there was enough time for the two to slowly taste the sweetness of husband and wife. On the side of senior sister Gong Sunling, there was naturally no problem. As early as in the territory of the demon sect, Gong Sunling had already regarded herself as Yang Chen's woman, otherwise the two would not be so intimate. Even so, when Gong Sunling really heard Yang Chen's proposal and saw Gao Yu next to Yang Chen, she still showed ecstasy after confirming that she was not dreaming. Regardless of Gao Yu watching with a smile, she threw herself into Yang Chen's arms. Gong Sunling had been waiting for Yang Chen for a long time. Yang Chen easily held Gong Sunling in his arms with one hand. He looked down at Gong Sunling, who was crying with joy, and glanced at Gao Yu, who was smiling on the side. His other free hand pulled and immediately pulled Gao Yu to his side and held her in his arms. Gao Yu was going to struggle, but Yang Chen's arm seemed to become a steel hoop in an instant, which was extremely strong. Gao Yu knew that she couldn't get rid of it. She sighed in her heart, smiled slightly and called out, "Enemy!" Then she gave up struggling and also put her body on Yang Chen's chest. Looking from a distance, Yang Chen's body became huge after cultivating the yellow turban strongman body refining technique, like a powerful gorilla, one in each hand, holding two petite beauties in his arms. If the two women struggled a little, it would simply be a real-life version of the Beauty and the Beast. Under the slightly overbearing embrace of Yang Chen, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling also looked at each other and saw the joy in each other's eyes, and also saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. It seemed that after confirming the relationship at this moment, Yang Chen no longer regarded them as masters and sisters, but as their wives, and he also had a trace of a husband's style. Looking at the two women in his arms and feeling the elasticity of the two women's delicate bodies, Yang Chen's heart was filled with mixed feelings. In a trance, he saw his past life again. Gong Sunling turned into ashes at the moment of the tribulation, and Gao Yu told him to escape and commit suicide. Everything seemed to happen in front of him. Two talented women died like this. In this life, Yang Chen would never let these tragedies repeat again. If Yang Chen wanted to marry his master and sister, he would have to report to the head of the palace and the ancestor. For the arrival of this day, whether it was the head of the palace or the other elders, it seemed that it had been expected. Everyone smiled and blessed, and no one objected. As for the ancestor Wang Yong, he was the one who supported Yang Chen to accept all of them, and there would be no disagreement. This was a major event in the Chunyang Palace. Even if it was not known to the whole world, at least it should be celebrated in the sect. The arrangement of the elders made Gao Yu and Gong Sunling always ashamed, but Yang Chen was thick-skinned and listened with a smile. However, what are you going to do with the cold plum fairy and the dancing snow fairy? After the bustle, the head of the palace seemed to remember this. Facing Yang Chen, he asked this question. The other elders were also quiet, waiting for Yang Chen's answer. Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were related to the relationship between the Chunyang Palace and the Blue Cloud sect of the Green Jade, Immortal Island. It was not a small matter. They didn't know how Yang Chen considered it in this regard. As soon as this question came out, Yang Chen suddenly became silent. To be honest, he really didn't think about how to deal with the relationship with the two women. I am the master of Yang Chen, I make the decision, Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, I will marry them both. Before Yang Chen could answer, his master Gao Yu over there had already given the answer on behalf of Yang Chen. Chapter 760. Yang Chen's mind was still a little hesitant. On the one hand, he felt that accepting Gong Sunling was already a little unfair to his master. Secondly, Yang Chen has never figured out whether he should accept Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. This was not a wish that came from his heart. In other words, while feeling sorry for his master, the feelings of Yang Chen and Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue have not yet reached the point where they could be together. This was not surprising. They did not spend a long time together. Although every meeting was very pleasant, it was not to the point where they would not marry anyone else. But now Gao Yu once again made the decision for Yang Chen as a master, and Yang Chen could not object. Gao Yu's identity was now very special. Not only was she Yang Chen's master, but she was also Yang Chen's wife. Whether it was Gong Sunling, Shi Shanshan or Sun Qingxue, if they wanted to enter the Yang family, even if they had a high cultivation base, they had to bow their heads and call Gao Yu elder sister. In the end, Yang Chen still did not object to Gao Yu. He sighed and nodded. Since he had accepted them, he might as well accept them all. Yang Chen also did not want the cooperation between Chunyang Palace and Blue Cloud sect of the Green Jade, Immortal Island, to be destroyed. The problem now was that there was no problem with Chunyang Palace, there was no problem with Gao Yu Gong Sunling, and there was no problem with Yang Chen. He just didn't know what Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue meant. Were they willing to work with Gao Yu and Gong Sunling for Yang Chen? In Yang Chen's view, Sun Qingxue may not have much objection, but it was hard to say for Shi Shanshan. With Shi Shanshan's arrogant temper, maybe she would not consider it at all. All right. When the head of the palace saw that Yang Chen also nodded, he was happy, and the other elders were also happy. This was everyone's ideal situation, and everyone was happy to see it happen. The sect will immediately choose a day to propose to the Green Jade, Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect. Palace Master Zhang Jiao was happy and immediately made a decision. It is rare for Chunyang Palace to have such a happy event. The sect must organize it once. The palace master made a decision, and everyone naturally would not oppose it. The head of the palace wanted to do a big thing, but he used this as a cover to bring the relationship between the Chunyang Palace and the Blue Cloud sect of the Green Jade, Immortal Island closer by 10%, which had a deep meaning. Yang Chen didn't need to intervene in the following matters. The sect would take care of it. The palace master even decided to personally go to the two major sects to propose marriage. As for the betrothal gifts, Chunyang Palace didn't have anything else, but the second-grade inner sensing pill and the second-grade questioning inner heart pill were definitely a big deal for other sects. Of course, the second-grade inner sensing pill could be prepared for a few more, but the second-grade questioning inner heart pill could only be prepared for 2, no more. But even so, it was a rare gift, and it would definitely make the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect satisfied. The sect arranged the marriage of Yang Chen. Naturally, it was necessary to take the birthdays of Yang Chen and the women to calculate the auspicious days. This period of time would not be very short. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yang Chen could go out. After determining the relationship with Yang Chen, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling naturally moved with Yang Chen. Originally, Gao Yu also wanted to travel with Yang Chen, but she had to temper the dragon horn and could not go out for the time being. Only Gong Sunling could accompany Yang Chen. This trip, Yang Chen was planning to collect a medicine-nourishing gourd left by an immortal on the Immortal Executioner stage. Yang Chen has been coveting this gourd for a long time, but he always felt that his strength was not enough and he couldn't collect it. Now the full attribute spirit power was condensed, and with a large number of first wood spiritual solution and seventh metal true essence spiritual solution as a foundation, Yang Chen already had the qualifications to collect this medicine-nourishing gourd. The medicine-nourishing gourd left by the immortal originally belonged to a top-grade alchemy master. After carefully refining the medicine-nourishing gourd, the medicinal pills placed in it would be slowly warmed by the gourd, purified and enhanced. Heaven-defying medicinal pills, such as the questioning inner heart pill and the heaven-seizing pill, were placed in the gourd, and there was no need to use talismans to block the medicinal properties. It was definitely a good thing that an alchemy master dreamed of. Gong Suanling's mountain river geographical map was that the more places it passed through, the more complete the geography drawn, and the greater the power of the formation. As long as there was a chance, Gong Sunling would go out. Now that she could travel with Yang Chen again, Gong Sunling was naturally eager. The location of the medicine-nourishing gourd was within the territory of the Dao sections. As long as he was a little careful, there would not be too much crisis. However, Yang Chen's identity was now special, and the Taishamen were trying to take Yang Chen's life. In any case, it was better to be careful. Before going out, Yang Chen went to the Qianqiu Pavilion Market again. Yang Chen also had to learn about the previous bounty on Yang Lan from Shangguan Feng. As Yang Chen expected, with Yang Chen once again increasing the bounty of spirit stones, Yang Lan, a guy in the foundation stage, even among the Taishamen, was in a panic all day long, for fear that there would be people around him assassinating him at any time. He was cautious every day, not to mention leaving the Taishamen. Even the outer mountain gate of the Taishamen did not dare to pass easily. This was exactly the effect that Yang Chen needed. Although Yang Chen was not as frightened as him in his previous life, he had been fleeing under the shadow of being chased for hundreds of years. Relatively speaking, Yang Lan's suffering was only a few days, and it was not enough to pay off the interest of Yang Chen's previous life. The reward has been raised to 10 pounds of high-grade spirit stones. Yang Chen once again raised the reward. For a guy in the foundation stage, this was already a sky-high price, and even to deal with a cultivator in the early Jedon stage, it was more than enough. Don't look at such a small amount of spirit stones. There were many people who were willing to exchange the heads of other cultivators. Yang Chen wanted to make Yang Lan live in fear through the promotion of the reward after a period of time. Yang Lan was not like Yang Chen. In his previous life, he relied on the big tree of the Taishamen to make a living, but his achievements were not high. At least Yang Chen had never seen the shadow of this guy in the spiritual world and immortal world for many years. He believed that when the reward given by Yang Chen was high enough, Yang Lan would be betrayed by the people in his sect, and they would take his head to Yang Chen to receive the reward. This was the life trajectory that Yang Chen planned for Yang Lan, and there would be no bias. Even Yang Chen hoped that Yang Lan would be more tenacious and more cunning, so that he could hold on to the last time. As Yang Chen said, with a questioning inner heart pill, there would definitely be an elder-level figure in the Taishamen who would personally solve Yang Lan's problem. Coming to Shangguan Feng, Yang Chen also had another purpose, that was to let Shangguan Feng inquire about whether there was a high bounty outside. According to reason, the general reward would never attract more than a dozen assassins. They were masters of the Yuanying stage, and the worst was also the peak Jedon stage. How could they run for some spirit stones? Shangguan Feng now had cooperation with the Wine Immortal House, and it was naturally easy to inquire about this news. Shangguan Feng patted his chest and promised that the next time Yang Chen came, he would definitely give him a satisfactory answer. Chapter 761. Yang Chen and Gong Sunling set off together. Even if they rushed to the location of the medicine nourishing gourd, it would take a few months. Both of them were in Yang Chen's shuttle. This time, Yang Chen did not intend to make it public, but he was very low-key. Anyway, Yang Chen and Gong Sunling were together, and the two loved each other. Along the way, it didn't matter how long it was, the two had a happy time. Not to mention the two peoples lingering along the way. In recent days, there was another thing that caused the entire Dao sects to be in an uproar. The matter was still in the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect, but it was not Yang Chen who proposed to Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, but in a short period of less than 2 months, the two major sect had a new master of the Deshang stage promoted. It was not surprising that a master of the peak Yuanying stage had been promoted to the Deshang stage in a big sect. However, it was not so easy to be promoted to the Deshang stage. In the past, Hua Wanting, Elder Hua, almost spent a whole 100 years competing with the blood demon vine, and with a little help from Yang Chen, he was promoted. After that, for almost 100 years, there was no new master of the Deshang stage. The old tree demon was his own accumulation, and he was still a monster race, the real Dao sect cultivator. After 100 years, there was only one Wang Yong of Chunyang Palace. However, Wang Yong had only been promoted for a few years, and immediately there were two peak Yuanying stage cultivators who were promoted, and both of them were sects related to Chunyang Palace, which was surprising. In fact, everyone understood that this was definitely the credit of the questioning inner heart pill. This kind of good thing that could allow the masters of the Deshang stage to take the opportunity to break through the realm. If used on the masters of the Yuanying stage, it could also make people reborn in their state of mind. Wang Yong's promotion was related to the questioning inner heart pill, and the two masters of the Green Jade, Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect were also related to the questioning inner heart pill. After the confirmation of the two major sect, the value of the questioning inner heart pill soared to another level. It was not known how many masters who were trapped in the peak Yuanying stage waiting for their lifespan to run out were desperate to get a questioning inner heart pill. Everyone knew that the pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill was in the hands of the pure Yang Palace's Yang Chen. All the questioning inner heart pills that appeared now came from Yang Chen's handwriting, and there was no exception. All eyes seemed to be focused on Chunyang Palace. If it was in the past, a small second-rate sect would definitely have a master come to the door and coerce Chunyang Palace to hand over the pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill or force Yang Chen to help refine the questioning inner heart pill. However, today was different from the past. The current Chunyang Palace was not the same as it was in the past. It had established a cooperative alliance with the Green Jade, Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect. Even if it was the Taishanmen, without any real evidence, they would not dare to easily deal with Chunyang Palace. Moreover, some big sects knew that even if the Green Jade, Immortal Island and Chunyang Palace wanted to refine the questioning inner heart pill, they had to pay enough remuneration to Chunyang Palace and Yang Chen, and they also had to prepare their own medicinal materials. From this point of view, whether it was the Five Elements sect or the Qiankuan sect, they all wanted to have a little relationship with Chunyang Palace. Otherwise, they would not have accepted some secret plain compensation from the Green Jade, Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect, and they would not have been more closely related to the two major sects. It was clear that they wanted to build a line with Chunyang Palace through the Green Jade, Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect. After all, there had been no intersection before. Even if it was the Five Elements sect and the Qiankuan sect, they could not overlook Chunyang Palace with the eyes of the past. If they asked for help, they must have the attitude of asking for help. In this regard, The Five Elements sect and the Qiankuan sect did well enough, and they had enough patience. Cultivation knew no time. A mere few years or even a few decades to establish a good cooperative relationship was definitely not a big deal for the people of these big sections. Even if it took a longer time, it was definitely worth it. Not to look at the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Blue Cloud sect. They had only cooperated for a few decades, hadn't they? In the same way, didn't the Taishamen want to get the questioning inner heart pill? However, the previous arrangements against Yangchen against Chunyang Palace have completely pushed Chunyang Palace and Yangchen to the opposite side. Even if the Taishamen wanted to build a relationship with Chunyang Palace, it was impossible with the hatred of Yangchen's previous life. In the Battle of the Secret Plane, the Taishamen lost 5 Dashang stage masters and the 2 major sect lost 3 each. Originally, there was some balance. After all, the 2 major sects' foundation was not as deep as the Taishamen's, and the number of such top masters was still insufficient. Originally, there was still a little advantage, but now, the miserable Taishamen could only watch the 2 major sect cultivate 2 brand new Dashang stage masters in less than a few years. And with the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Blue Cloud sects questioning inner heart pill in hand, this situation would only appear more and more. For the Taishamen, this was definitely a fatal thing. If the current situation was allowed to develop, the top power of the Taishamen would be surpassed by the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Blue Cloud sect. At this moment, the Taishamen's reserve force was hit hard. The Taishamen's Dao sect leader status was already in jeopardy. All of this seemed to be related to Yangchen. The high-level Taishamen wanted to break their heads, but they couldn't figure out why a kid in the early Jedon stage who cultivated under their eyelids could bring them such great trouble. From the questioning inner heart pill, the high-level Taishamen also seemed to have speculated about the cause of the death of the Yuanying stage masters and those killers who died in the pursuit of Yangchen. With this kind of good thing, it was not impossible to ask 1 or 2 Dashang stage masters to secretly protect him. With this speculation, the high-level Taishamen suddenly had no confidence in killing Yangchen. Such an enchanting guy, if there were a few Dashang stage masters secretly protecting him, what kind of lineup would it take to kill Yangchen? The problem was that now for the development of the sect, Yangchen must be killed. Otherwise, once Yangchen refined more and more questioning inner heart pills, the threat to the Taishamen would become greater and greater. Now the 5 Elements sect and the Qiankuan sect were faintly leaning towards the side of Chunyang Palace. Once the other 4 major sects got Yangchen's questioning inner heart pills, but the Taishamen did not, it would be a deadly threat to the Taishamen. In any case, Yangchen must be killed. Not only that, but they must also rob or destroy the pill recipes that Yangchen may have left. They were afraid that it was not enough to deal with Yangchen alone, they had to count the entire Chunyang Palace. There was no moment when the Taishamen would feel that the small second-rate sect of Chunyang Palace would be so threatening that they would want to get rid of it quickly. All of this was just because of the emergence of the enchanting character Yangchen. If that stupid guy had not thrown Yangchen out of the gate of the Taishamen, how good would that be? Chapter 762. Yangchen and Gong Sunling, leisurely all the way as if they were sightseeing. They slowly swam toward the location of the medicine-nourishing gourd, regardless of the sky that had been turned upside down because of the questioning inner heart pill. Gong Sunling took out her best craftsmanship. Just like a wife, she carefully prepared food for Yangchen every meal according to the time. Anyway, Gong Sunling's main energy now was to temper her life source magic weapon and consolidate her cultivation base. The mountain river geographical map had its special effect. As long as she traveled to enough places, she could improve it. There was no need for Gong Sunling to consume too much energy to immerse herself in cultivation. In this way, it was naturally advantageous to Yangchen. Every meal, Yangchen could enjoy the food that Gong Sunling carefully designed and made for Yangchen. Every meal made Yangchen smile and want more. Every time at this time, Gong Sunling would be by Yangchen's side, dutifully adding food and rice for him, and then watching Yang Chen eat the food she prepared with joy. Her face was full of a satisfied smile. Yang Chen knew that the best way to treat his beloved wife, who cooked for him with her heart, was to gobble up the food she made. This was the greatest respect for her heart. And Yang Chen did the same. Gong Xuanling's appetite was small, and cultivators rarely ate some mortal food. Almost 99% of the delicious food fell into Yang Chen's mouth. In addition to this, the two talked about some mountains and rivers, geography, and travel. Gong Sunling was essentially still an array cultivator. For array cultivators, no matter how powerful the array was, it was nothing more than the whole world. No matter how powerful the master was, he had to survive in the world and could not jump out of it. The reason why the mountain river geographical map was so powerful was precisely because of this. Therefore, what Yang Chen and Gong Sunling said was nothing more than to let Gong Sunling have a better understanding of the natural world, which was also of great benefit to her cultivation. Of course, no matter how much Yang Chen said, it was not as good as Gong Xuanling's own experience and travel around the world. However, that was definitely a matter in the future. Naturally, when the two were together, there was no lack of spiritual awareness double cultivation. The great improvement of Yang Chen's spiritual awareness had great benefits for Gong Xuanling's improvement. In fact, before returning to Chunyang Palace, Gong Xuanling's spiritual awareness had already been raised to the peak of the early Yuanying stage. And every time they cultivated, the spiritual awareness of the two would be more condensed. Although Yang Chen had a more powerful physical double cultivation method in his mind, Yang Chen did not intend to cultivate when everyone was in the early Zhedan stage. Not to mention that Yang Chen, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were all tempering their life source magic weapons. Rashly cultivating double cultivation would damage their life source magic weapons. Just now, their cultivation was too low, and it was not enough to cultivate those double cultivation method. For the double cultivation below the Yuanying stage, unless there was no other way, Yang Chen would never consider it. This was not only for Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, but also for Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue in the future. Yang Chen would rather cultivate the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra with them than to easily cultivate his body and spirit power. Originally, it was thought that the upsurge of the new masters of the Deshang stage would slowly weaken with the passage of time. However, when a master visited the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, Yang Chen was once again pushed to the forefront of the storm. The one who visited the two major sects was the Black Tiger predecessor of the Beast Taming sect. In fact, strictly speaking, the first to accept the monster race was not Chunyang Palace, but the Beast Taming sect. However, the cultivation method of the Beast Taming sect was relatively special and could not be completely separated from the relationship with the monsters. Every monster pet was a monster beast, and a powerful monster pet was a more powerful monster beast. In essence, these monsters were the monster race, but they were the monster race controlled by people. Of course, the Dao sects could accept this kind of thing, there was no doubt. The identity of the Black Tiger predecessor was also a monster pet left by an ascended predecessor to take care of the sect. The powerful master of the Beast Taming sect would never have only one monster pet, and it was not difficult to leave one behind. With the lifespan of the Black Tiger monster race, coupled with the cultivation base of the Deshang stage, no matter which sect, he could afford the title of a senior. What's more, now the Beast Taming sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island Blue Cloud sect Chunyang Palace have been cooperating to manage the 100,000 mountains. Of course, the two major sects received him with the courtesy of a senior. This year, it was the time for the Black Tiger predecessor to leave the 100,000 mountains. Because there were few masters of the Deshang stage in the Beast Taming sect and Chunyang Palace, the two sects took turns to send masters. When the Black Tiger predecessor came back, it was his turn to visit Chunyang Palace. Of course, it was the clone of the old tree demon Gui Shanyu who went to Chunyang Palace. The Black Tiger predecessor visited the two major sects purely out of courtesy. The beast-taming sect has also received a lot of resources and rapid development in recent years, and it definitely had the most direct relationship with the four sects. As a small sect, the beast-taming sect certainly knew where these benefits came from, so it was natural for the Black Tiger predecessor to visit the two major sects as the most respected existence of the beast-taming sect. Don't look at the Black Tiger predecessor sitting in the 100,000 mountains, but what happened in the past 10 years has not been hidden from his eyes and ears. There were also some well-informed people in the 100,000 mountains, especially after the four major sects took control of the 100,000 mountains. Many people in the Tao sects went to the 100,000 mountains to try their luck, and the Black Tiger predecessor knew no less than anyone. It was originally just a courtesy visit, but when he was in the Blue Cloud sect, he still talked about this secret plane battle by accident. For this level of secret plane, the Black Tiger predecessor has never had extravagant hopes, but when he heard that the Blue Cloud sect had two masters of the Deshang stage who were seriously injured, it was likely that they would not be able to recover for hundreds of years or even longer. He still showed a little surprise, and at the same time, there was also a little hesitation. Sect Master Lu was aware of this for the time being, and he waited a little in his heart, and sincerely asked the Black Tiger predecessor for advice. Anyway, Sect Master Lu was also a junior in the face of the Black Tiger predecessor. It was natural for the younger generation to ask the senior for advice. When the old man was crossing the unveil tribulation, he was seriously injured. Although he was lucky enough to be promoted to the Deshang stage, the hidden injuries have been in the body. The Black Tiger predecessor hesitated for a moment, but still said it out. I have been suppressing the hidden injuries for hundreds of years, and a few decades ago, I was finally unable to suppress it. This was the secret of the beast-taming sect, which was related to the life and death of the beast-taming sect. The beast-taming sect has never announced it to the public. Now that the Black Tiger predecessor has already recovered, it was no big deal to say it to Sect Master Lu. This was also the first time that Sect Master Lu heard this secret of the beast-taming sect, and he was very focused. When the hidden injuries were about to break out in full force soon, this old man met Yang Chen. The Black Tiger predecessor finally said the most important part. After he saw the injury of this old man, he refined two medicinal pills for this old man. One is called the Black Tiger Calming Pill, the other is called the Black Tiger Yuan Replenishing Pill. After taking the two medicinal pills, this old man's hundreds of years of hidden injuries were healed. Chapter 763. At this point, it was already clear that it couldn't be clearer. Before, everyone was still talking about the success or failure of the secret plane. The Blue Cloud sect sent 6 masters of the Deshang stage. 1 died and 2 were seriously injured. Not to mention the dead one, but the 2 seriously injured ones, the situation was similar to that of the Black Tiger predecessor. What's more, the injury of the Black Tiger predecessor was a hidden injury left by the unveil tribulation. Strictly speaking, it was still more serious than the injury of their formation. Even the injury of the Black Tiger predecessor could be healed. Didn't that mean that these 2 seriously injured Deshang stage masters could also do the same? The first 3 masters of the Deshang stage who were sent were the 3 guys in the Blue Cloud sect who didn't listen to Sect Master Lu. However, after this secret plane lesson, coupled with the questioning inner heart pill that created a new master of the Deshang stage, the remaining 2 seriously injured guys must have understood the general trend. In this case, if the 2 seriously injured masters of the Deshang stage could be healed, wouldn't it mean that the strength of the Blue Cloud sect would immediately return to before the secret plane competition, and they would be more united, and there would be more resources in the secret plane? Sect Master Lu has been in charge of the Blue Cloud sect for many years, and of course, the key to this could be understood. After listening to the description of the Black Tiger predecessor, he was overjoyed. If Yang Chun could heal the injury of the Black Tiger predecessor, it was very likely that he could also heal the injuries of the two masters of the Deshang stage in the sect. When they were cured of their injuries and obedient, the benefits were self-evident. Since this matter has already been said in the Blue Cloud sect, the Black Tiger predecessor in the Green Jade Immortal Island also did not favor one over the other, and said the same thing. The Lord of Tantai and Sect Master Lu's ideas were almost the same, otherwise, they would not have such a tacit understanding in the previous secret plane competition, each sending a few disobedient guys. Although the Green Jade Immortal Island had two Deshang stage masters dead, and only one was seriously injured, he was also a master of the Deshang stage. If he could be healed, even if he didn't listen, it was also the power of the sect. Everything seemed to have returned to Yang Chun. Yang Chun, who was planning to collect the medicine nourishing gourd outside, did not know that he had unconsciously become the focus of everyone's attention. These secrets were, of course, limited to the upper echelons of the two major sects. Senior Black Tiger would not meet just anyone and say that his serious injuries were healed by Yang Chun. Therefore, not many people knew about this. However, there was another thing about Yang Chun that everyone knew, and it quickly caused a sensation. The palace master of the Chunyang Palace personally went to the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect to propose to the Cold Plum Fairy and Dancing Snow Fairy respectively for their own sect's disciple Yang Chun. This matter did not have much concealment and quickly spread throughout the Dao sections. Cold Plum Fairy and Dancing Snow Fairy, as long as one was a cultivator, one would know the names of these two. She came from a prestigious clan, had exceptional talent, and was also incomparably beautiful. Any one of them would be the Dao companion of countless cultivators. It was not known how many people had the idea of the two fairies, but now, a disciple of the Chunyang Palace dared to risk the world's condemnation and tried to marry the two fairies as Dao companions. How could it not make countless people who had the idea of the two women angry? Although Shi Shanshan had already said that she was Yang Chen's person, didn't this never become a fact? Many people were looking forward to the sudden death of Yang Chen, and they could take the opportunity to enter. Although Dancing Snow Fairy did not say so clearly, many people in the Blue Cloud sect also knew that the relationship between Sun Qingxue and Yang Chen seemed to have reached the point of being a monarch. People who knew about this kind of thing understood, but they also knew one thing, that was, it was not difficult for Yang Chen to become a Dao companion with any one of them. However, if he was greedy and wanted to marry the two beauties, imitating a Huang and Nuying, it was simply impossible. Not to mention that the two women would not agree to this kind of thing, but the two major sects of the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect could not pass. Needless to say that the head of the Chunyang Palace personally came forward. Even if the head of the Taishaman sect came forward, the two major sects might not give face to the head of the Taishaman sect. What's more, this was not the most extreme. The most devastating thing was that Yang Chen, this kid, actually wanted to marry his master and senior sister at the same time. At this point, the Chunyang Palace did not hide it at all. According to this, Cold Plum Fairy and Dancing Snow Fairy were not necessarily Yang Chen's wives. After hearing this news, the first reaction in everyone's mind was to slap their faces. This was definitely Chunyang Palace slapping the faces of the two major sects. There was no other explanation. Was there anything more ridiculous than hearing this? Compared with this kind of shock, Yang Chen wanted to marry his master, which was almost a small sesame seed. Among the cultivators, there were many master and apprentice double cultivation, so it was not worth making a fuss. What really shocked everyone was that the move of the Chunyang Palace was definitely treating the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect as easy targets to bully, soft persimmons that could be taken. If this could be tolerated, what couldn't be tolerated? There was no formal attitude on the side of the two major sects, but the cultivators in the world were already in an uproar. What did the Chunyang Palace want to do? Even if they wanted to die, it was not like this. Did they really think that Yang Chen, a small alchemy master, could be so arrogant? Yes, in the world of cultivators, alchemy masters were indeed distinguished, and ordinary people were not willing to provoke them easily. However, this did not include the big sect like the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Blue Cloud sect, which big sect did not have a few senior alchemy masters. Did they really think that without a small Yang Chen, no one could refine medicinal pills? Among them, the happiest was the Taishanman. The move of the Chunyang Palace was absolutely self-destructive. The alliance established with the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Blue Cloud sect was ruined because of the stupid move of the Chunyang Palace. As long as there was no alliance with the two major sects, if the Taishanman wanted to destroy the Chunyang Palace, it was just a matter of minutes. Everyone was waiting for the reply from the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Blue Cloud sect. Everyone was waiting to see the joke of Chunyang Palace and Yang Chen. Countless gloating guys were even thinking about how they could get the greatest benefits from the Chunyang Palace once Chunyang Palace was abandoned by the two major sects. If they could grab the pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill, it simply meant the brightest future. Yang Chen, who was in the teeth of the storm, was not aware of being noticed at all. He was traveling with Gong Sunling along the way, slowly approaching the location of the medicine nourishing gourd. There were still 10 days of journey ahead, and it was the destination. At that time, the medicine nourishing gourd that Yang Chen dreamed of would be in Yang Chen's pocket. Chapter 764. Yang Chen's destination was in the mountains near the west. Although it was still the territory of the Dao sects, because the spiritual veins here were relatively rare, few cultivators would come here except for some rogue cultivators and occasional fellows. However, few people came did not mean that no one came. At least Yang Chen and Gong Sunling had now met a few, and it seemed that they were very rude to Yang Chen and Gong Sunling. Fellow Taoists, this is the place where the master of the family seclusion practice. Please leave. Four masters of the Peak Jidan realm stood in a row and blocked the way of Yang Chen and Gong Sunling. The four looked at Yang Chen and Gong Sunling, and their eyes were not good. Approaching the destination, Yang Chen and Gong Sunling gave up the shuttle and changed to flying on the sword, but the speed was still not fast, just to find the most accurate place. Unexpectedly, before they reached the location that the Immortal said, they were suddenly stopped by four people. Seclusion. Yang Chen and Gong Sunling were both stunned. There was a lack of spiritual veins here. Even if it was daily cultivation, there was not enough spiritual power, unless a large number of spirit stones were used to supplement it. It was too much to describe it as a place where birds did not lay eggs. There were actually people who secluded themselves here? Fortunately, this was not the destination of Yang Chen. If others wanted to seclude themselves, Yang Chen could not control them. Listening to the words of the four people, Yang Chen said indifferently, "If that is the case, then let's take a detour." When Yang Chen spoke, Gong Sunling stood quietly behind Yang Chen and did not speak. Since Yang Chen had come forward, she only had to wait for Yang Chen to deal with it, and she did not have to worry about anything else. This kind of attitude was a complete mess. It was said that the four people had no reason to make things difficult for Yang Chen and Gong Sunling. However, things were unpredictable. Just as Yang Chen and Gong Sunling were about to leave in another direction, the leader of the four suddenly rushed in front of them and blocked their way. "My master is in seclusion here, and everything within a 500-kilometer radius is a forbidden area. Fellow Taoists, please return to where you came from, so as to avoid harming our friendship." The Jidan Realm Master who appeared in front of Yang Chen and Gong Sunling had a cold face. While blocking the way, he threatened coldly. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, Yang Chen's destination was included. Yang Chen looked in that direction and could not help but sigh. He did not have the intention to fight with them, but there would always be people who would take the initiative to come to him. He could not help it. "I don't know how long you will be in seclusion. I will come back when the time is right." Before making a move, Yang Chen still lowered his stance and tried to solve it in other ways. He was here to retrieve something, not to fight to the death with others. Generally speaking, Yang Chen was still a person who was easy to talk to. As long as it was not something too excessive, Yang Chen would not pursue it. Just like when Guang Ning of Bright Moon Palace wanted to snatch Yang Chen's brilliant ray sword, Yang Chen did not get angry at first, and even promised to give him a better flying sword. If it was not for Guang Ning's pressure, Yang Chen would not have killed him. To Yang Chen, cultivation was not about killing. If he really wanted to kill, the number of immortals Yang Chen had killed would be more than the number of immortals that everyone in this world had heard of. At Yang Chen's level, he was not interested in arguing with a bunch of kids in the mortal world. If it was a few Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals, perhaps Yang Chen would still have some thoughts. The higher one stood, the more humble they would appear. Yang Chen seemed to be in such a state now. Naturally, this was also related to his memories from his previous life. Hearing Yang Chen's words, the other party obviously did not expect Yang Chen to answer like this. Even if it was an unreasonable person, when met with Yang Chen's response, there seemed to be no reason for him to get angry. You said not to go in, fine, I won't go in, I will take a detour. You said not to take a detour, I will go back the same way, fine, but I will ask when I can pass. Since it was just a retreat, and it was not a long-term occupation here, there must be a time limit, right? One would not hit a smiling person. Which guy who could cultivate to the peak of the gold core realm was a fool who would stir up trouble everywhere. This, the patriarch did not say, but the other party was obviously stunned for a moment, and then replied. After answering, he seemed to feel that he could not give a definite answer. After hesitating for a while, he said, after 1,000 years. 1,000 years? Yang Chen frowned directly. With the current cultivation speed of Yang Chen and the women, 1,000 years was enough for them to ascend. What was the point of taking things? Kid, if you want to go, just go, don't talk nonsense. The answer of the guy opposite obviously did not satisfy the others, and suddenly a voice next to him interrupted. If you don't want to go, I don't mind keeping you here forever. It seems that it is not bad to accept a little guy as a slave. Another voice seemed to be more ferocious. In addition, this little girl seems to have a good aptitude. If she is offered to the master as a furnace, we will also have a great reward. With one sentence, Yang Chen's face suddenly became cold. Yang Chen did not mind others using the attitude just now to let him leave, but the words involved Gong Sunling, that was another matter. I don't quite understand what he's saying. Please explain it to me a little. Yang Chen's face changed quickly, and he immediately recovered his calmness, and asked the person standing in front of him in a deep voice. The person opposite glared at the last guy who had just spoken rudely, and was about to say something, but the guy had already directly opened his mouth and said, You don't understand? The woman behind you, my master wants her. If you offer her with both hands, we can let you be our slave and spare your life. Will it kill you to speak nicely? Yang Chen sighed, took 2 steps back, turned his head and said to Gong Sunling next to him, Linger, they want you, then you play with them. Gong Sunling nodded silently, took 2 steps forward, and replaced Yang Chen's position. Yang Chen let Gong Sunling stand up, of course, for her to gain experience. Although cultivation was not to kill people, combat experience was essential, and the 4 guys at the peak of the gold core realm in front of her seemed to be just right for Gong Sunling to practice. Although Gong Sunling was now only at the early stage of the gold core realm, in terms of cultivation aptitude, Gong Sunling was not worse than Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingshu. In her previous life, she did not have the resources that the 2 fairies had in their sect, and secondly, it was the wrong direction of cultivation. But in this life, it was completely different. With the strong support and guidance of Yang Chen, Gong Sunling had embarked on a completely different path. Wu Tu True Secret Art, plus the Tai Xian Yin Yang Heart Sutra, had raised Gong Suanling's combat effectiveness to the point where she could fight with the peak of the Gold Core realm. Chapter 765. Shua, a powerful sword shadow swept in front of the four people, which directly shocked the four people. They involuntarily jumped back far away, and each of them took out a magic weapon. Gong Suanling's sword shadow was only to sweep away the space, and did not continue to attack. Instead, in the angry and stunned eyes of the four people, she took out a table and a chair from the Qiankuan bag, and placed them beside Yang Chun. After Yang Chun sat down, she took out a few plates of braised food from the Qiankuan bag, and all kinds of tableware were available. After doing all this, Gong Sunling stepped forward and faced the four masters of the Peak Jedon realm, and a dazzling light burst out of her eyes. What was this? The four masters, who were shocked by Gong Suanling's actions, finally understood what Gong Sunling was doing. She was actually preparing food for the boy of the early Jedon realm when the battle was about to begin, so that he could watch their battle while eating small dishes and sipping wine? What did she think of them as? Boundless anger directly rushed into the minds of the four masters of the Peak Jedon realm. From birth to the present, even when they met their current master, they had never felt so insulted. Without any protection, they let a junior of the Jedon realm use their battle as a performance with wine. Were Yang Chun and Gong Sunling really naive, or were they fearless? Gong Sunling was not as easy to talk to as Yang Chun. Before Yang Chun dealt with them, as Yang Chun's wife, Gong Sunling certainly wanted her husband to stand up for them. Now that her husband let her fight against the enemy, Gong Sunling had no intention of holding back. The protective maze was instantly activated, and Gong Suanling's figure disappeared silently. After the understanding of the Mountain River geographical map, coupled with the content that Yang Chun had talked to her these days, Gong Sunling had a deeper understanding of the way of the maze. What kind of maze could be compared to the real world of the Mountain River geographical map? The four masters at the peak of the Jedon realm watched as Gong Suanling's figure suddenly disappeared. No matter how they urged their divine senses, they could not detect Gong Suanling's position. Just at this moment, the four experts at the peak of the Jedon realm with rich combat experience immediately knew what to do. Yang Chen was sitting on the other side, not moving at all. He had even gotten a pot of wine from somewhere, poured a cup, and slowly sipped on it. As long as he attacked Yang Chen, there was no reason for Gong Sunling to keep hiding. The four of them had worked together for who knows how many years and had a very good understanding of each other. Almost at the same time, their magic treasures flew towards Yang Chen. They couldn't be more familiar with besieging way to rescue the besieged. Unfortunately, just as these lightning-fast attacks were launched, before they could even reach Yang Chen's side, the four of them felt a sharp sword aura behind each of them. With their many years of experience, they immediately knew that if they were hit, there would be absolutely no good end. Without hesitation, the four of them took back the magic treasures that attacked Yang Chen and faced the sword aura that attacked each other. Everyone's movements were very fast. Ding 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 ding, almost at the same time there were four sounds. After the sword aura and the magic treasures collided, they suddenly dispersed. But the four masters of the Jedon realm did not get any benefit. Everyone's face showed a very cautious look. A junior in the early Jedon realm actually fought against four of them at the peak of the Jedon realm with tacit understanding, and did not fall into a disadvantageous position. What kind of concept was this? The four people couldn't imagine it. When did the little guy in the early Jedon realm become so fierce? They had seen a lot of geniuses who challenged above their level, but that was only by a small level. The most powerful ones were only 2 small levels above their level to challenge the masters. Generally speaking, even if the juniors in the early Jedon realm reached their limit, they could only fight against the guys in the late Jedon realm. They had never seen or even heard of a little guy in the early Jedon realm who could cross 3 small levels and challenge the masters at the peak of the Jedon realm, and it was in the case of 1 against 4. But this was not the end. Countless sword lights, like dense raindrops, appeared wildly from all directions and attacked the four people. Even if they had rich combat experience, the four people had never seen such a dense sword-light attack. This had simply subverted the limit of their understanding. It should be known that there was no sword formation here, and they would not give Gong Sunling time to arrange a sword formation. But this kind of dense attack, except for the sword formation, they could not think of any other possibility. To be able to surround four masters at the peak of the Jedon realm, it was impossible for a person to move so fast. There was no other possibility except for the formation. But knowing that it was a formation, the four people could not do anything about it now. The array formations that they had seen before were always traceable. The array flags that were used to set up the array formation and the people who were in charge of the array formation, even if they were trapped in the array formation, there would always be a trace of understanding of the array formation. However, where they were now, they were obviously in the same place, nothing had changed, and they did not even feel like they were in the formation, but they were facing the attack of the formation. How could this not make the four people surprised? What was even more surprising was that whether it was their deliberate attack or the attack of the woman that was blocked, when some of the aftermath flew to the side of Yang Chen, who was drinking and watching the show, it seemed to suddenly fall into nothingness and disappeared without a trace. Gong Xuanling's attack did not stop at all, and the strength of the attack was getting stronger and stronger. The four guys at the peak of the Jedon realm had become more and more serious. The bodies of several people had already leaned together, but they still could not completely resist the overwhelming attack of Gong Sunling. On the bodies of the four masters, there were already a lot of bloodstains. This was because they had to block the fatal attack and ignore some other unimportant places. According to this situation, there was only one thing waiting for them, that was, their spiritual power was exhausted and they were killed on the spot by the opponent. The four people racked their brains and couldn't understand how Gong Sunling, a junior in the early Jedon realm, could have such a long spiritual power. The four people were already exhausted and even began to take medicinal pills and use spirit stones to recover, which was barely able to block the attack of the vital parts. But Gong Xuanling's attack did not weaken at all, but it was getting stronger and stronger. Even a fool would understand that they had kicked a big iron plate this time. Yang Chen had not made a move yet, and Gong Sunling had already forced them into such a mess. The guy who had spoken rudely was already regretting his actions to the extreme. If he had known that this would happen, why bother to say those unreliable words? Yang Chen was already very polite, and they still wanted to bully others. As Yang Chen said, would it kill them to speak well? Chapter 766. When the four people were all lying on the ground with blood all over their bodies and couldn't move, Gong Xuanling's figure appeared on the side. The sword in her hand flashed, and the guy who had just spoken rudely had his head directly fall to the ground. It was clean and tidy, without mercy. The guy who also said a word that was unpleasant to listen to, at this moment, was so scared that he could no longer speak. As for the master who dealt with Yang Chen at the beginning, his face was ashen. When Yang Chen talked to them politely, they didn't know how to cherish it. Their two companions also threatened Yang Chen and Gong Sunling to be slaves and cauldrons. This kind of thing could not be tolerated by anyone. The other party only let Gong Sunling take action alone, and the four of them were defeated and killed. The situation in front of them could not be good. Gong Sunling, under Yang Chen's training, did not have the kind of soft-heartedness she had before. Even if these opponents had fallen to the ground, each of them still added a sword, completely destroying any thoughts of luck. I am a little curious now, who is your master? Yang Chen sat there, still holding a glass of wine, and did not even mean to get up. He just calmly looked at the three living guys who were thrown by Gong Sunling on the ground not far away, and asked slowly, "Since you are interested in my wife, I am not talented, but I have to know your name?" While Yang Chen was asking questions, Gong Sunling had already happily taken off the Qiankuan bag from the four people and began to check the spoils. With Yang Chen, Gong Sunling had done these things in the territory of the demon sections. Every time she did it, she was in high spirits and never tired of it. The three people lying on the ground were basically useless. He was still alive, that was because of Gong Sunling's mercy. It must be known that Gong Sunling's sword array was driven by the top-grade spirit stone given by Yang Chen. Not to mention 4 peak Jedon stage masters, even 4 Yuanying stage masters could fight for dozens of months without being exhausted. It was their bad luck to meet Gong Sunling. If you want to kill me or torture me, do as you please. At this point, the three of them no longer had the arrogance they had before. The guy who spoke also knew that he had no chance of survival, so he could only throw out some harsh word. Of course, even though he said those harsh words, he had already cursed the dead guy countless times in his heart. The other party was polite because they had the confidence, but he still wanted to capture the other party's wife and use her as a human cauldron. He was courting death, but he had implicated his companions. I'm a reasonable person. Yang Chen slowly took a sip of the jade dragon wine, and then added another cup. Actually, I don't like to use any means to make people talk. The slow voice, at this moment, had an unspeakable pressure that made the three people lying on the ground unable to resist. Who is your lord? I only need to go to the place where you said you can't go to know, so your insistence is actually meaningless. Yang Chen took a piece of unknown monster meat and drank a small cup of jade dragon wine. Then he looked up and said, "For me, it's actually a matter of knowing sooner or later. Of course, you can also not say it, I'm not in a hurry." Yang Chen then said slowly, "I admire your loyalty to his lord, but since your lord is still in retreat, he must be afraid of being disturbed. I don't have any other strengths, but I still have the ability to make some noise. Now, can you tell me who's inside?" After saying all this, Yang Chen didn't care about the reaction of the three people and directly said his own requirements. "My master is the alchemist Gao Jing." Finally, the guy in the middle opened his mouth. "The master is refining an important medicinal pill there and can't be disturbed. We were in the wrong earlier. Please forgive us if we have offended you. We hope that you can understand." Alchemy in this kind of place where birds don't shit? Yang Chen was stunned and asked strangely, "What's the point? There's not even a spiritual vein, how many spirit stones will be lost?" Since the other party spoke, Gong Sunling also stopped her movements and returned to Yang Chen's side. Obviously, she was also attracted by this question. Because alchemy in a certain place here has a higher success rate than other places. The three guys on the ground haven't been born yet, and a strange voice came in. Then, a figure suddenly appeared opposite Yang Chen and Gong Sunling, standing a few steps behind the three people on the ground. The one who appeared was a Yuanying stage master, standing proudly opposite Yang Chen and Gong Sunling. It seemed that he didn't care about answering Yang Chen's question at all. He just looked down at the three guys lying on the ground and turned his head to look at the one who had died not far away. He frowned and scolded, "Useless things! It turns out that you are their master." Yang Chen still didn't mean to stand up. He looked up at the Yuanying stage master who suddenly appeared and shook his head. "Forgive me for my poor eyes, I can't see where you look like an alchemist. Of course, they don't dare to tell you my identity." The Yuanying stage master who appeared later seemed to have felt that he had already eaten Yang Chen and Gong Sunling. He also said slowly, "I don't let you in, it's for your own good. But since you don't want to do it the hard way, then don't blame this old man for being ruthless. You killed the third brother, which shows that your cultivation base is not bad. In this case, you will replace the position of the third brother and be a slave to this old man." The Yuanying stage master stared at Yang Chen and seemed to be talking about something trivial. His eyes then turned to Gong Sunling. "This girl is not bad, this old man is still missing a furnace concubine. In this wilderness it can also be more fun." The Yuanying stage master did not give Yang Chen and Gong Sunling a chance to speak again. When he said these words, it was as if it was natural. Yang Chen and Gong Sunling had been at his mercy. The tone of command was not concealed. "Are you done?" Yang Chen sat in the chair and did not move his buttocks, staring at the Yuanying stage master. "I'm done." The Yuanying stage master sneered and said, "This old man usually only gives people one chance, don't miss it." Sure enough, what kind of master is what kind of servant? Yang Chen also sneered. This guy appeared arrogant, and he told Yang Chen that alchemy here could increase the success rate. Obviously, he did not intend to let Yang Chen and Gong Sunling go back. However, in the same way, Yang Chen had long discovered the existence of this guy. Until now, he just wanted to know why. Since he knew that there was something weird about alchemy here, it was obviously related to the medicine nourishing gourd. At this point, this guy was no longer useful. Raising his hand, Yang Chen made a goodbye gesture. The other party was stunned, and then a gray light, lightning from the bottom to the Yuanying stage master. Chapter 767. Gong Sunling had already been reminded by Yang Chen. When the three of them spoke, she quietly returned to Yang Chen's side. And near the location where the Yuanying stage master appeared, she left her own praying mantis puppet on the ground. The praying mantis puppet was discovered by Yang Chen and Sun Qingxue in a secret plane, all of which had a peak Yuanying stage cultivation base. Yang Chen gave it to many people in the sect. His master and senior apprentice sister each had one. The refined puppet was later re-refined by Wang Yong, and its power was almost comparable to the cultivation base of the praying mantis. Moreover, the puppet itself did not have any vitality. It was still of the earth attribute, hidden under the ground, without a strong spiritual awareness like Yang Chen. Even if he stood on it, it was impossible to find it. Yang Chen waved his hand, and Gong Sunling controlled the praying mantis puppet to attack. The main means of attack of these praying mantises was the two knife arms, and when they were waved, they were extremely fast. Even when Yang Chen first entered the secret plane, he was almost beheaded, and he had to use his body protection magic weapon to keep his life. Although the Yuanying stage master who appeared was arrogant, his strength was not so good. There was neither a Deshang stage master like Sun Qingxue to prepare a body protection magic weapon, nor Yang Chen's powerful body protection method. The two knife arms had already crossed the body of the Yuanying stage master, and he reacted. But no matter what reaction he had, it was too late. The praying mantis swiped two knives, a vertical knife and a horizontal knife, and the other side was cut into 4 sections. When the 4 pieces of bloody corpses fell to the ground, the 3 people on the ground did not have any reaction. When they finally understood what had happened, the 3 people couldn't help but scream. They couldn't help but be shocked. Their master, the savior in their hearts, was killed in front of them like this, and they didn't even have the chance to escape. Was there anything more that made them feel fear and despair than this? However, their screams did not last long. The praying mantis puppet casually swung its blade and cut the 3 people lying on the ground into 6 pieces. The screams stopped abruptly. Gong Sunling went to clean up the Qianquan bag of the Yuanying stage master, and Yang Chen was thinking about whether the discovery of the alchemist was related to the medicine nourishing gourd. According to reason, this was neither a place with abundant spiritual power nor a place rich in elixir. In addition to the medicine nourishing gourd, Yang Chen could not think of any reason to improve the success rate of refining elixir. Obviously, he didn't know the real reason, or perhaps he didn't have the time to find out the real reason. The Yuanying stage master and the 4 slaves appeared here. It was estimated that they were also here to ask the alchemist for a pill. Sealing this place was definitely to allow that alchemist to concoct pills better, but their luck was not good. In this kind of place where even birds lay eggs, there was actually an expert like Yang Chen and Gong Sunling appearing. The purpose of this trip was for the medicine nourishing gourd, and Yang Chen certainly would not leave this kind of thing to others. Even if others found out, Yang Chen would not hesitate to rob others. There was no one in front, and soon Yang Chen arrived at the place where the medicine nourishing gourd was. As Yang Chen expected, on the top of the mountain, a Yuanying stage alchemist was sitting on a flat ground, carefully controlling a seemingly good pill furnace, and it seemed that he had reached the critical moment. It seems that this person should be the alchemist Gao Jing in those people's mouth. There were few people here. Gao Jing was so absorbed that he did not notice who the person was. After waiting for a while, it seemed that an important juncture had just passed. The alchemist breathed a sigh of relief and looked up, just to see Yang Chen and Gong Sunling in the distance. It was not the Yuanying stage master that he was familiar with. Gao Jing's heart was shocked, and the pill furnace in his hand was out of control. With a bang, the pill furnace burst into a roar, and a black smoke came out of the pill furnace. This batch of elixirs was completely wasted. Gao Jing's mind was sharp, and it was not his old friend who appeared at this moment, but two strangers. His old friend received a message not long ago to deal with the guy who broke into the mountain, but now he has not come back. What happened, it can almost be concluded. Not caring about the dregs in the pill furnace, Gao Jing put away the pill furnace with the fastest action, and then turned around and ran without looking back. He also seemed to have a good flying magic weapon in his hand, and instantly escaped dozens of miles away. He is smart. Yang Chen took Gong Sunling and landed on the flat ground where Gao Jing was refining pills. As soon as his nose sniffed, the smell of the dregs entered his nose. Danyang grass, flying dragon fruit, humph, this is to refine a fixed spirit pill. The medicinal power has been integrated, condensed and not scattered. The second-grade spirit pill has not been successful. After a series of medicinal names were said, Yang Chen could already judge what kind of medicinal pill the other party was refining. The second-grade spirit pill can't control the fire in time. A little shock will ruin the furnace. I think the level is not very good. At most it is the level of a third-grade alchemist master. The name of Gao Jing, Yang Chen had never heard of it in his previous life. It could be seen that he was not a great person. A third-grade alchemist master, Yang Chen could not afford to offend. This was where the medicine nourishing gourd was, but obviously the other party did not find this. It was no wonder that standing here, no matter how the spiritual awareness explored, it could not detect any abnormalities, and it was normal not to find it. It was already a great opportunity to be able to detect a higher success rate of alchemy here. This is where you said the medicine nourishing gourd is? Gong Sunling looked around, looked carefully, explored with spiritual awareness, couldn't find the medicine nourishing gourd, and couldn't feel the aura of any magic weapon. She couldn't help but have some doubts. Of course. Yang Chen was also puzzled, but soon understood the location of the medicine nourishing gourd, and answered Gong Sunling with certainty. After Gong Sunling looked at it again, she still didn't find anything. She could only ask Yang Chen, "Where is it?" "It's under our feet," Yang Chen replied with a smile, pointing to the position under his feet. "Here?" Gong Sunling's spiritual awareness quickly explored the bottom and continued to explore for dozens of feet without finding the slightest abnormality. Once again, she cast a confused look at Yang Chen, waiting for Yang Chen's explanation. "You fly a little farther, you may see it more clearly." Yang Chen smiled and pointed. Gong Sunling said nothing and immediately sacrificed the ship and flew far away. She carefully looked at the foot of Yang Chen and finally found a clue. The mountain peak under Yang Chen's feet, one side sharp and thick, looked round, and there was a ring-shaped gully washed out by the mountain torrents near the mountainside. Looking from a distance, it was clearly a gourd that was enlarged many times. Chapter 768. The magic weapon in Gong Sunling's concept was the kind that could be controlled in the hands. Even if she had seen a big one, it was only such as her own ship, Yang Chen's shuttle, and so on. If it was bigger, it would be Gao Yu's Deshang stage puppet, which was restored to its original size of hundreds of feet. That was already the largest magic weapon Gong Sunling had ever seen. Although she knew that the size of the magic weapon could be changed with the owner's mind, this size was also limited to a certain range, and it was not too exaggerated. But now Gong Sunling discovered that her heart was still not big enough, and she still couldn't imagine how outrageous the magic weapon was. Even if her own mountain river geographical map could draw the whole world, the body was only a painting axis that was more than 10 feet long and a few feet wide. How could she think that there could be such an outrageous magic weapon? A mountain peak, hundreds of feet high, stretching almost hundreds of miles in length. Such a huge mountain peak turned out to be a magic weapon. This made Gong Sunling shocked, and she also began to reflect on her own lack of realm. Who stipulated that the magic weapon could not be very big? Gong Sunling instantly understood this. She was a smart person, and she suddenly realized something. On the ship, she sat down directly and began to retreat. Yang Chen rushed up without saying a word, threw a questioning inner heart pill into Gong Sunling's mouth, and then sat beside her to protect her. It was rare to have this kind of epiphany opportunity. Yang Chen certainly would not let Gong Sunling miss it. Gao Jing had been scared away, and there would be no one to disturb him in a short time. He didn't know how long Gong Sunling's retreat would take, and Yang Chen simply began to collect the medicine nourishing gourd. Before collecting, Yang Chen still made sufficient preparations. 24 Penglai divine wood monsters, directly in accordance with the position of the heavenly cycle constellation Great Array, surrounded Gong Sunling and the ship. The Penglai divine wood monsters were already at the peak foundation stage at this time. Under the nourishment of the first wood true essence spiritual solution, they would be able to attack the Jedon stage in a few years. The 24 Penglai divine wood monsters were connected. Once the heavenly cycle constellation Great Formation was arranged, even if it was a master of the middle Yuanying stage, it would not necessarily be able to take advantage. The strength of the tree demon could be seen from Gui Shanyu. The Penglai divine wood tree demon and Yang Chen had a master-servant connection. Once someone broke into this circle, Yang Chen would know immediately. In the middle of the heavenly cycle constellation formation, Wan Qian's 5 female disciples arranged the 5 beautiful girls formation, which also protected Gong Sunling and the ship. Even if there was a strong enemy, Gong Sunling would not be harmed. After arranging all this, Yang Chen began to collect the medicine nourishing gourd. Previously, Yang Chen had not come to collect it because his cultivation was not high enough. At that time, the Immortal who left the medicine nourishing gourd said that if Yang Chen's cultivation base was not at the Yuanying stage, he should never expect to be able to collect it. Now Yang Chen's spiritual power had condensed down. According to the calculation of the sky measuring ruler, his spiritual power cultivation base had reached more than 3,000 degrees, far exceeding the limit of the general Yuanying stage master. It was more than enough to collect the medicine nourishing gourd. However, Yang Chen was still well prepared. Even if he had the formula to collect it, he was not a real Yuanying stage master. In terms of spiritual power mobilization, there was still a certain gap with the Yuanying stage master. Therefore, after Yang Chen prepared a lot of 7th metal true essence liquid, he moved the medicine nourishing gourd. The method of collection was very complicated. The complete method required Yang Chen to continuously complete hundreds of talismans, and each time, it required Yang Chen to exhaust his whole body's spiritual power to condense a talisman. It would take more than a day's time to do so. The Yuanying stage was the lowest level that could collect the medicine nourishing gourd, but it did not mean that the Yuanying stage would be able to collect it. For anyone else, even if they reached the Yuanying stage, it would not be an easy task to condense such a talisman. To control the spiritual power of the whole body and condense it into a delicate talisman, without the control of the Yuanying stage or even the peak Yuanying stage, it was almost impossible to condense successfully. This was not only the need for spiritual power, but also the extreme requirements for control. The medicine nourishing gourd was used by the alchemist, and for the alchemist, being able to control the fire of alchemy was the most basic skill. What the medicine nourishing gourd needed was at least the third-grade alchemist who could control the fire to refine the third-grade spirit pill. If this could not be done, there was no qualification to use the medicine nourishing gourd. At this point, Yang Chen was very clear, and he himself had met this requirement. Even so, the condensation of each talisman was still pouring all of Yang Chen's thoughts, which was almost the limit that Yang Chen could do in this case. It took Yang Chen a day and a half to condense each talisman successfully, and this was still under the continuous supplement of the seventh metal true essence liquid. If this was not the case, in this place with a lack of spiritual power, either a lot of medicinal pills or a lot of spirit stones would be used, otherwise as long as dozens of talismans were condensed, the people who wanted to collect it could be squeezed dry. This was another test. As an alchemist, either the medicinal pills were sufficient or very rich. These 2 points could be regarded as a real alchemist. The little guys who had just learned a little bit of the way of alchemy were completely unqualified. With the support of a huge amount of seventh metal true essence liquid, Yang Chen hardly needed to rest and could condense a talisman one after another. Every time a talisman was condensed, Yang Chen would put it into the mountain peak. What surprised people was that Yang Chen had already put in almost 100 talismans, but the mountain that should be the medicine nourishing gourd had no change, which made people doubt whether this mountain was really the medicine nourishing gourd. If it wasn't for the alchemist Gao Jing, who found that the success rate of alchemy here would increase, even Yang Chen would doubt this. However, with the confirmation of that guy before, Yang Chen was already very sure that this mountain was the real medicine nourishing gourd. Gong Sunling finally woke up after 2 years, and the spiritual power of the whole body skyrocketed. With this realization, she directly broke through the bottleneck of the early Jedon stage and entered the middle Jedon stage. From the beginning of the Jedon stage to the present breakthrough, Gong Sunling spent almost 50 years. A genius was a genius, the cold plum fairy Shirshanshan. In this hurdle, it took almost the same time to enter the middle Jedon stage. The gap between Gong Sunling and Shirshanshan was greatly reducing. After waking up and finding Yang Chen's action, Gong Sunling did not disturb Yang Chen, but looked for opportunities to let Yang Chen know that she woke up, so that he did not have to worry. Then Gong Sunling began to quietly cultivate, silently waiting for the day when Yang Chen finished collecting. Chapter 769. 3 years later, Yang Chen finally condensed the last talisman and put it into the mountain peak. With the last talisman in, Yang Chen's body suddenly felt a huge suction, accompanied by the scream of Gong Sunling. His body involuntarily entered a certain space. This was a very huge space, which was like a lattice, divided into countless small spaces, densely packed, at least tens of millions of them. Yang Chen understood that this space was the interior of the medicine nourishing gourd, because it was filled with a medicinal fragrance that Yang Chen was familiar with, which was very strong. As long as Yang Chen's mind moved, he could appear in any grid. Yang Chen knew that in each grid, one kind of medicinal pill could be stored. The spirit medicine preserved here did not need to use talismans to block the medicinal properties, the medicinal qi would not be released, and the medicinal effect would be better and better because of the nourishment of the magic weapon. Originally, Yang Chen thought that there would be a lot of peerless medicinal pills in it, but what disappointed Yang Chen was that despite the medicinal fragrance, under the sweep of spiritual awareness, Yang Chen did not find any trace of the spirit medicine. It seemed that the owner of the medicine nourishing gourd just left the gourd, and did not leave any spirit medicine. However, among these grids, it was not empty. At least in the millions of grids, there were some black dreg-like things. With Yang Chen's experience, he recognized at a glance that these black things were dregs. But Yang Chen still didn't understand. Such a powerful medicine nourishing gourd did not put medicinal pills, but put so many dregs. What was the reason? The surprise was always at the end. In the innermost grid, there were hundreds of jade slips. When Yang Chen first discovered it, he couldn't believe his eyes. In the medicine nourishing gourd there were so many jade slips. Could it be a peerless pill recipe? Yang Chen picked up a piece, his spiritual awareness explored, and carefully looked at the content. Very soon, Yang Chen was a little disappointed. This jade slip only recorded the changes of some common medicinal herbs under various fire conditions, as well as the changes of some medicinal herbs that were incompatible with each other. According to Yang Chen's current level of alchemy, after referring to the Laojundan Sutra and the Yundan Sutra left by several immortals, these things were simple for Yang Chen. These simple medicinal materials, Yang Chen could control the most perfect heat at any time and there would be no mistakes at all. However, as Yang Chen picked up more and more jade slips and browsed through them, Yang Chen's expression became more and more cautious and serious. The contents recorded on these jade slips were basically the same, the only difference was the type of medicine. Towards the end, there were some simple combinations of pill recipes, but the contents were all about the changes in medicinal ingredients under various fire conditions, and most of the time, it was a record of failure. But Yang Chen began to pay attention to it, and he was careful to hold the jade slips, as if they were peerless treasures. Yang Chen couldn't help but pay attention to it. He now discovered from the things recorded on these jade slips that he seemed to have taken a wrong route on the road of alchemy. Despite the Laojundan Sutra, the Yundan Sutra, the pill recipes of the spiritual world and the immortal world, and the memory of Yang Chen's own fire attribute spirit root, the control of fire could be said to be extraordinary. All of this, with the power of the profound spirit furnace, Yang Chen could almost be said to be the most powerful alchemist master in the mortal world. There were many medicinal pills that could prove this, whether it was the heaven-seizing pill, the questioning inner heart pill, or the second-grade inner sensing pill, the black tiger yuan-raising pill, the black tiger calming pill, and the qi-seeking pill. These could prove that Yang Chen was definitely a senior alchemist master. Even Yang Chen himself thought so before. Almost every furnace of medicinal pills that Yang Chen refined had never failed, all were successes. At most the quality of the medicinal pills was different, and the number of medicinal pills released was different. He had never failed to refine a furnace of medicinal pills. But after reading the records on these jade slips, Yang Chen suddenly discovered that he was not a senior alchemist master in the strict sense. The reason was that Yang Chen had never failed to refine any medicinal pills. This reason sounded ridiculous, but Yang Chen knew that all of this was because of the memory of Yang Chen's previous life. However, Yang Chen was just a very ordinary alchemist master in his previous life. Perhaps an ordinary alchemist master in the heavenly court could indeed be a senior alchemist master in the mortal world, but this does not mean that Yang Chen could still have such an advantage after ascending. If it was a pill recipe that Yang Chen had never heard of, and some medicinal materials that Yang Chen had never touched, whether Yang Chen could still maintain such a level, even Yang Chen himself could not guarantee it. These detailed jade slips told Yang Chen vividly how a real alchemy master grew up. For each kind of medicinal material, this master had tested it with a variety of different fires under different circumstances, what kind of mistakes would be formed, and what kind of consequences would result. Similarly, the same was true for the experiments in those pill recipes. What kind of mistakes would occur in the combination of different medicinal materials under different circumstances? This was the embodiment of the real basic skills of alchemy. As the saying goes, failure is also a kind of experience. The smooth sailing situation is bound to not last too long. No one is an exception. There will always be setbacks and failures one day. Being able to learn from failure, that was the most correct attitude. On the way of alchemy, what Yang Chen lacked was precisely failure. Because with the memory of his previous life, Yang Chen did not know too much about what kind of failure he might encounter on the way of alchemy. Now in the mortal world, Yang Chen can still pretend to be a master, but when he really goes to the spiritual world and goes to the immortal world, Yang Chen will definitely reveal his true colors. What was recorded on these jade slips was the valuable alchemy experience of the immortal, and there were many failures. Some even deliberately failed to learn the changes in medicinal power under different circumstances. As for the dregs in the grid, it was the result of these failures. Every experiment, there was a pile of corresponding dregs left. In the medicine nourishing gourd, these dregs were also perfectly preserved, ready for Yang Chen to study at any time. Now in the eyes of Yang Chen, even if the grid was full of peerless elixirs, it was not as precious as this pile of dregs. With these, Yang Chen could make up for his lack of knowledge of medicinal materials to the greatest extent, so that Yang Chen could consolidate the foundation that he lacked the most. Even if someone took thousands of Taishang Laojuan's 9 revolutions golden pill to exchange, Yang Chen would never be willing to exchange these dregs now. Until this moment, Yang Chen really understood what kind of alchemy cultivation path he should take. Chapter 770. A series of talismans came out. Yang Chen had actually completely mastered the medicine nourishing gourd. Soon, Yang Chen appeared in the same place, and there was a small purple-red gourd in his hand. The mountain that stretched for hundreds of miles on the opposite side disappeared without a trace at this moment, showing a huge valley, as if the mountain had never appeared. Gong Sunling found that Yang Chen was missing, and she was very worried for a while, but found that the 5 women around her did not make any movements, and she was a little relieved. After waiting for more than half a day, Yang Chen finally appeared. Although she had guessed that Yang Chen was going to collect the medicine nourishing gourd, Gong Sunling still threw herself into Yang Chen's arms after seeing Yang Chen. It seemed that only in the arms of Yang Chen, smelling the familiar smell of Yang Chen, and feeling his warm embrace, could she be completely at ease. Soon, Gong Sunling's attention was on the purple-red gourd in Yang Chen's hand. After looking at it for a while, she reached out and touched it, and asked curiously, "This is the medicine nourishing gourd you mentioned? Is it very powerful?" Of course. Yang Chen showed this with practical actions. When the merit ring was opened, all the medicinal pills flew out, and then they were sucked into the gourd. There were dozens of medicinal pills wrapped in layers of talismans that Gong Sunling was familiar with, broke the talismans in front of her, and then flew into the gourd. Gong Sunling was stunned on the spot. That was clearly the second-grade questioning inner heart pill. She just took one before the retreat and naturally recognized it. However, although Yang Chen said that the questioning inner heart pill was not a precious thing, Gong Sunling still felt very precious in her mind, but when she really saw this scene, she was still very shocked. It turned out that Yang Chen had so many second-grade questioning inner heart pills in his hands. No wonder when he gave these things to them, they were all ordinary things. Just looking at the medicinal pills that flew into the medicine nourishing gourd for a while, the value was already immeasurable. Gong Sunling sighed again. It seemed that the realization she got before because the medicine nourishing gourd was too big seemed to be not enough. She should try to think in the most impossible places. Are these all second-grade questioning inner heart pills? Seeing it and not daring to confirm, it was too shocking, Gong Sunling asked aloud. Both. Yang Chen smiled and said, "I've said it before, it's not something precious. Just tell me when you need it." In the end, as if wanting more, Yang Chen added, "There are still a lot of raw materials, you don't have to save them for me. After using up this batch of second job revolutions, we will refine third job revolutions in the future." These words made Gong Sunling stunned. It seemed that the boundaries of her imagination were not enough. Not to mention fantasy, the facts had not reached the boundary. If you can come up with another heaven-seizing pill, I will believe that there is nothing impossible in this world. Gong Sunling looked at Yang Chen and said this sentence. It must be said that this was Gong Sunling's exclamation, but Yang Chen looked at Gong Sunling very strangely. The meaning revealed in his eyes seemed to be, "How do you know?" And Gong Sunling was shocked. "You don't really have a heaven-seizing pill, do you?" Gong Sunling was shocked and asked this question with a horrified face. "Senior sister, you really know how to count?" Yang Chen shook his head helplessly and sighed. Then, a jade box appeared in front of the two of them. On the jade box, the lines of an array were engraved, and the surface was shining. At a glance, it was obvious that it was an array that was working. With Gong Sunling's eyesight, of course, she could see at a glance that this array could not only seal the medicinal effect, but also trap the things inside the box. Yang Chen opened the jade box without hesitation, and then there were dense, shining talismans inside. Inside was another small jade box. There was also an array engraved on it, and the effect was still the same. The small jade box was opened again, and there were still talismans inside, and there was a small jade box inside. At this time, Yang Chen said, "Inside is the heaven-seizing pill that you mentioned." You. Gong Sunling stretched out her hand to cover her surprised cherry mouth. After the 3 consecutive "you" words, she could hardly say anything else. Finally, after reacting for a while, she was shocked and asked, "Did you refine 2 heaven-seizing pills for Elder Wu Xiong?" 1. Yang Chen opened the jade box and a cyan pill covered with dragon patterns appeared in front of Gong Sunling. "This is the one that was refined for Elder Wu Xiong." It seemed that the shackles around him had been lifted, and the pill suddenly turned into a cyan dragon shadow, intending to fly away. But how could Yang Chen make this kind of mistake? As early as before opening the jade box, his spiritual awareness had already filled the surroundings, and this space was firmly locked. The dragon shadow flashed, but it was still in the same place, but it kept flashing and moving like a living thing. Controlling the medicine nourishing gourd, Yang Chen slowly sucked the heaven-seizing pill into the gourd. It seemed that it was good for itself to be in the gourd. The heaven-seizing pill did not struggle and quickly disappeared in the mouth of the gourd. Elder Wu Xiong had experience and confidence because he resisted the wind tribulation for the heaven-seizing pill, so he didn't use the heaven-seizing pill at all when he ascended. Yang Chen sent the heaven-seizing pill into the gourd and breathed a sigh of relief. He continued to explain to Gong Sunling, "Anyway, Elder Wu Xiong kept it useless, so he gave it to me as a reward for refining the pill." Even though Gong Sunling had seen the magical heaven-seizing pill appear with her own eyes, there was still a feeling of not believing her eyes. How could this happen? How could it happen? Yang Chen found Wang Yong and asked him for the heaven-seizing pill before he collected the medicine nourishing gourd. This heaven-seizing pill was congenitally deficient, so it did not go through the wind tribulation. It was completed with the help of Elder Wu Xiong, and it could not be regarded as a complete heaven-seizing pill. The medicine nourishing gourd could not only maintain the medicine qi, but also nourish the medicinal pill. Because of this, Yang Chen decided to raise the heaven-seizing pill in the medicine nourishing gourd. Maybe before Wang Yong ascended, this heaven-seizing pill could slowly improve the quality and restore to the most complete medicinal power. Gong Sunling's comprehension was very good, but she was limited by her knowledge. Even if the retreat was successful, she still artificially set a boundary for herself. Even if this boundary was getting bigger and bigger, it was still within the limit after all. This time, when she saw Yang Chen's second-grade questioning inner heart pill and saw the questioning inner heart pill appear in front of her, Gong Sunling suddenly realized another truth. It turned out that in the world of cultivation, there was nothing that couldn't be done. Chapter 771. The understanding of this thought made Gong Sunling's state of mind improve again. Before, she thought that she had understood something, but now she found out that she was still a frog at the bottom of the well. The reality was more exaggerated than imagined. It had to be said that going out to gain experience was indeed a very reasonable thing. This time, Gong Sunling was completely free from the shackles of imagination. In the future, the sea was wide and the sky was high. There was nothing that could limit Gong Sunling's imagination. After collecting all the medicinal pills of Yang Chen into the medicine nourishing gourd, both of them had a huge harvest. There was nothing left to miss here, and soon the two embarked on the way back. After going out for 3.5 years, Yang Chen and Gong Sunling did not know that the marriage proposal of the head of the palace to the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect had caused an uproar in the Dao sections. If it was in the past, if Chunyang Palace dared to make such a request, the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect would definitely directly send a few masters to Chunyang Palace and uproot the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace, leaving nothing behind. Insulting people was not so blatant, right? However, the current Chunyang Palace and Yangchen were not the same as before, so that in the case of knowing the intention of the head of the palace, the two major sect put on a grand reception ceremony, which was only the etiquette for treating the distinguished guests of the sect. The proposal of the head of the palace was very formal. Not only did the head of the palace personally go to the two major sect, but he also brought 2 elders with generous betrothal gifts. When the news came out, there was an uproar. Whether it was the Green Jade Immortal Island or the Blue Cloud sect, they did not give an answer to the head of the palace on the spot. Both sides had to discuss with their respective disciples and ask the 2 disciples for their own opinions before giving an answer. This was the proper attitude. Whether it was Shi Shanshan or Sun Qingxue, both of them held high positions in the sect. They were the most valued disciples in the sect. An elder or the sect leader would never order them to sacrifice their lives for the sake of their own future. Moreover, such a major event would definitely involve the relationship between the sect. The Lord Tantai and sect master Lu could not make a decision on their own. They always had to discuss it with the elders. Among them, the betrothal gifts offered by the head of the palace also played a great role. Several second-grade questioning inner heart pills and second-grade inner sensing pills. The two major sect had a few second-grade questioning inner heart pills, but they were reluctant to use them. As for the second-grade inner sensing pill, except for Chunyang Palace, no other sect had it. All of them were resources exclusively produced by Chunyang Palace, and the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect had to carefully consider it. In the past, the two major sect forced Chunyang Palace to give an answer, but now it was reversed. Chunyang Palace was waiting for the two major sect to give an answer to themselves. In fact, the marriage proposal also clearly showed the attitude of Chunyang Palace. The next step was to see whether the two major sect would accept it or not. Others may think that this was a demonstration by Chunyang Palace, but the two major sect actually knew that this was also a compromise made by Chunyang Palace in order not to destroy the relationship between the three parties. Otherwise, Yang Chen could only marry his master and senior sister, and the two major sect would have nothing to say. Sun Qingshue's attitude was almost needless to say. From the beginning, she took the initiative to follow Yang Chen. Even if she already knew about Shi Shanshan's affairs, she never flinched. Shi Shanshan, because of a strange combination of circumstances, misjudged the strength of Yang Chen at the beginning, but later in the contact with Yang Chen, she also gradually had a tacit understanding, and there was a breakthrough in their relationship. Moreover, Shi Shanshan also vowed that she would not marry anyone else, which seemed to mean that she agreed. The attitude of the two women was basically clear to the sect. However, if Yang Chen was allowed to hold the beauty, wouldn't it seem that the two major sect were too unbearable? How could they be so easy to talk to? For Yang Chen, the senior executives of the two major sect were very appreciative, and even regretful that such a disciple was not in their own sect. In recent years, from Yang Chen, the two major sect have also gained a lot of benefit. The medicinal pills, the 8th metal true secret art, and the underwater elixirs made the two major sect happy. Not to mention the recent secret plane incident, these were enough to make the two major sect's senior executives nod their heads. What's more, after the Black Tiger predecessor visited the two major sect, he also left a revelation to them. Yang Chen seemed to be able to treat the injuries of the masters of the Deshang stage. The general injuries of the masters of the Deshang stage would hardly care too much. Their cultivation base was enough to heal themselves. However, if the injury was serious to a certain extent, it was not something that could be solved by cultivation base. The Black Tiger predecessors' decadent waiting for death for hundreds of years was a clear proof. Yang Chun could treat the injuries of the masters of the Deshang stage. Although these injured masters were not obedient masters, they were still masters of the Deshang stage. Weren't they the top fighting force in the mortal world? No matter how disobedient they were, they wouldn't betray the sect, right? What's more, after such an experience, the island master and the sect master gave up their face and asked someone to help them treat their injuries. In any case, there would be a little change in their attitude. Because several masters had died, their overall strength was no longer enough to compete with the island master and the sect master. After they were cured, they wouldn't be able to set off much of a storm. The most important thing was that when they reached the Deshang stage, the idea of fighting for power and profit would eventually fade, unless there was no hope of ascension. But the problem was that the sect master and the island master had the questioning inner heart pill in their hands, and the second-grade questioning inner heart pill, which was definitely a good thing that could make people ascend. In this case, they would never have any second thoughts. Therefore, the two major sects still needed Yang Chun to help treat them. This led to no matter what the situation was, it was not appropriate to fall out with the Chunyang Palace. Their own disciples were happy, and the sect also needed to ask Yang Chun. This matter was actually very easy to settle. However, the two major sects naturally had to have the face of the two major sects. The two sides had a tacit understanding to put forward a temporary way for the sect to step down, and at the same time, it also fulfilled the decision of Yang Chun and the two women. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect formally responded to the Chunyang Palace, and each made two requests. As long as Yang Chun could do it, then the two women would marry together. If Yang Chun couldn't do it, then when it was done, the two women would marry him. Of course, this request was made in the name of the Cold Plum Fairy and the Dancing Snow Fairy. If he wanted to accept both beauties, why didn't the two fairies make a small request? The requirement of the Cold Plum Fairy Shanshan was that Yang Chun must be able to defeat her personally, then she would commit herself to marry him. The requirement of the Dancing Snow Fairy Sun Qingxue was that Yang Chun must be able to refine a 5th-grade medicinal pill. Both sides had a common requirement, that was, after marrying, whether it was Gao Yugong Sunling or Shanshan Sun Qingxue, there was no distinction between big and small. Everyone was a co-wife, and there was no such thing as a concubine. The reply was given very formally, and it was not concealed from anyone. As soon as the reply of the two major sects came out, it immediately caused a shock to the entire Dao sect. Chapter 772. What shocked everyone was that the two super sects, the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, actually allowed their talented disciples to commit to one person at the same time. Moreover, this person was only a disciple of a second-rate sect. Although he had some achievements in alchemy, it should not be enough to make people pay so much attention to him, right? What was equally shocking was the request put forward by the two fairies. There was no distinction between big and small, they were all equal wives, this was easy to do. Moreover, with the appearance and background of the two fairies, it was impossible for someone to take the two women as concubines. However, the other request of the two fairies was clearly making things difficult for him. Yang Chun must personally defeat the Cold Plum Fairy Shanshan, which in the eyes of many people was almost impossible. It must be known that when Yang Chun had not yet entered the Chunyang Palace and began to cultivate, Shanshan had already reached the Jedon stage. After such a long time of cultivation, even Yang Chun had already entered the early Jedon stage, and Shanshan had already entered the late Jedon stage. Letting Yang Chun, a kid who had just entered the early Jedon stage, to challenge the famous Cold Plum Fairy who was famous for her fierce fighting, it was not known whether this was the Green Jade Immortal Island helping Yang Chun or deliberately embarrassing Yang Chun. Don't look at Shi Shanshan, who was only in the late Jidan stage, but in the past 100 years, Shi Shanshan has spent almost all of her time in battle. The masters of the Yuanying stage who died in her hands were not only one or two. Her rich combat experience was unmatched among the people of the same age. The combat power of Shi Shanshan could not be judged by the realm at all. People who knew Shi Shanshan's character knew that since Shi Shanshan made such a request, it meant that Shi Shanshan would never let go in the battle and would go all out. On the other hand, Cold Plum Fairy's opponent, Yang Chen, had fought against a Qi condensation cultivator on the heavenly stairway, and had fought against the Taishaman Li Qinchen in a life-and-death duel. Although both duels ended in victory, everyone knew that Yang Chen was not an expert who was good at fighting. This could be seen from how Yang Chen admitted defeat every time he accepted a challenge. If he didn't have a guilty conscience, why would he admit defeat again and again? Saying that he was not suited to challenge others and only accepted duels to the death was the biggest joke in the world. Who didn't know that a life-and-death challenge could only be initiated by the one with the lower cultivation? Who wouldn't be afraid of a life-and-death battle with someone with a lower cultivation? Just by looking at Yang Chen's physique, one could tell that he was incomparably sturdy. It was obvious that he had won through strength. Against the experienced Shi Shanshan, relying on brute force would be courting death. Moreover, Yang Chen was famous for his alchemy. In this regard, Yang Chen did a very good job, no one could deny it. However, since he was so proficient in the way of alchemy, then in the way of fighting, he was slightly lacking. This was not incomprehensible. No one could be proficient in all the ways of cultivation. Don't look at Yang Chen, who has entered the Jedan realm, but everyone absolutely guessed that Yang Chen relied on his own refining of medicinal pills to advance. No one would doubt this point. It was common knowledge that those who relied on elixirs to advance their cultivation level would have a fighting strength. If they asked others, they would be ridiculed. Even some people among the Taishamen had such an understanding. Although the Taishamen had sent a lot of Yuanying stage masters to assassinate Yang Chen, they had not succeeded so far, but the people of the Taishamen felt that Yang Chen must have used medicinal pills to buy a few peerless masters to protect himself. Although Yang Chen was once chased by a master of the late Deshang stage and successfully escaped, these had nothing to do with Yang Chen's combat effectiveness. With such a huge gap in the combat effectiveness of the two sides, in the case of Shi Shanshan not letting go of the water, it was absolutely impossible for Yang Chen to defeat Shi Shanshan. Not to mention now, even in the distant future, it was impossible. Yang Chen's combat effectiveness would increase. Could it be that the cultivation genius Shi Shanshan would stay in the same place? What a joke! On the other side, the requirements of the dancing snow fairy Sun Qingxue were even more surprising. It sounds very simple, any kind of medicinal pill could be refined in the 5th grade, but people who know the difficulty of alchemy would not think so. Not to mention how difficult it was to refine the 5th grade, just one fact could clearly explain how difficult the problem faced by Yang Chen was. Throughout history, the highest level of alchemy master in the mortal world was only the 4th grade. The standard to be promoted to the 4th grade alchemy master was to be able to refine a certain kind of medicinal pill for the 4th grade. A certain kind of medicinal pill was not any medicinal pill, that is to say, as long as the simplest kind of medicinal pill was refined in the 4th grade, one could become a 4th grade alchemy master. The 5th grade refining, as long as it was successful, no matter what medicinal pill it was, it meant that the alchemy master had reached the realm of the 5th grade alchemy master. Since the highest level of alchemy master in the mortal world was only the 4th grade, then Yang Chen, who was not the most talented alchemy master, how could he become a 5th grade alchemy master? It was not so much that the Cold Plum Fairy and the Dancing Snow Fairy gave Yang Chen an opportunity. It was better to say that the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect used this way to tactfully refuse the marriage proposal of the Chunyang Palace. In this way, everyone did not hurt the harmony, and it was also a happy situation, except that Yang Chen would be a little depressed. Everyone thought so, except for Gao Yu and Gong Sunling. Even the head of the palace and the elders who knew some of the secrets of Yang Chen had the same thoughts. Defeat the cold plum fairy Shirshanshan? Don't look at Yang Chen, who had killed the master of the Deshang stage, the second city lord. Don't look at Yang Chen, who had killed 6 Taishimen's Yuanying stage masters. Don't look at Yang Chen, who had captured more than a dozen Yuanying stage and Peak Jidan stage killers. However, if he wanted to defeat Shirshanshan one-on-one, it seemed that everyone was not optimistic about Yang Chen. As for becoming a 5th-grade alchemy master, it was an unprecedented problem. The palace master and several elders who received the replies from the 2 major sects even thought that the 2 major sects' euphemistic refusal. The head of the palace and the elders of the Chunyang Palace all had such thoughts, not to mention the onlookers who were waiting for the news. A toad wanting to eat swan meat, this was the consensus of everyone except the Chunyang Palace, that the Chunyang Palace wanted to propose a marriage for Yang Chen. Finally, they were worried about the face of the 2 major sects. No one dared to say it so blatantly. A second-rate sect, a small alchemy master, dared to think about this kind of good thing. The 2 major sects did not directly beat the person out, it was already giving face to everyone's cooperation in the past. Do you really think that the cold plum fairy and the dancing snow fairy can't find other Dao companions except you? After knowing this answer, many masters of the sect or rogue cultivators visited the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect to ask the 2 fairies for marriage. Chapter 773. Naturally, the attitude of these people was 1,000 times more sincere than that of Chunyang Palace. The children of their family were good-looking and focused. They would definitely treat the 2 fairies as treasures. Of course, the most correct attitude was that they only asked for 1 fairy, and never expected to have both beauties. However, for these requests for marriage, the 2 major sects rejected all of them. This made many people's faces a little ugly, but for the 2 major sects, they didn't dare to do anything, and could only endure it. Soon, some people realized their mistakes, and they were too hasty. The 2 major sects had just given a formal reply to Chunyang Palace, and Chunyang Palace hadn't said anything yet, so they came to their door, which was too unreasonable. Even if Yang Chen might not be able to meet the 2 conditions, at least they haven't done it yet. To defeat the Cold Plum Fairy, they must first stand in front of the Cold Plum Fairy and fight. To refine pills, they must also be prepared to refine. Chunyang Palace didn't do anything, so they thought that the 2 major sects had rejected Chunyang Palace. This was the mistake. After all, Chunyang Palace was still an ally of the Green Jade, Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect. At this time, they came to their door, obviously to provoke the relationship between the 3. Smart people should not do such stupid things. After recognizing the mistakes they had made, the people who came to ask for marriage no longer had any complaints about the rejection of the 2 great sections. The future was long, and after this matter was over, they could talk about asking for marriage. When Yang Chen and Gong Sunling returned to Chunyang Palace 3 months later, this matter had passed for more than 2 years. The wind outside had already faded a little. Yang Chen, things are a little troublesome. When Yang Chen and Gong Sunling met Gao Yu was also a little worried. Although Gao Yu still had absolute confidence in Yang Chen in her heart, this involved Yang Chen's reputation outside. Gao Yu was also a little worried. After listening to Gao Yu's story, Gong Sunling finally understood why Gao Yu felt that it was a little troublesome. However, after going out with Yang Chen this time, Gong Sunling suddenly felt that these 2 conditions were not completely impossible. This was not because Gong Sunling liked her Langjun, but because she completely understood that when there were some things that she didn't even dare to think about, she certainly couldn't do it. But once the shackles were removed, there seemed to be nothing absolute in this world. Don't worry, it's just a small matter. Yang Chen smiled and comforted his master. It's just 2 small requests. It can't be more difficult than finding a few dragon horns and dragon skin paintings, right? These words made Gao Yu feel 100 times more confident. At least in her cognition, Yang Chun has completed a lot of things that had never been done before. It seemed that it was not a big deal to have these two more. When he went to visit the head of the palace seemed to be a little sorry for Yang Chun. It seemed that he couldn't help Yang Chun win over the two women, so that he was absolutely ashamed of Yang Chun. The decision of the two sect, I can't understand it now. The head of the palace said truthfully to Yang Chun. He was now talking to Yang Chun in a tone that treated him as an equal. If outsiders saw it, they would definitely be surprised. The Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect did not intend to sever cooperation with Chunyang Palace, but they gave such a difficult problem to Yang Chun. Even the head of the palace could not see the meaning and did not understand how the two major sects considered it. Yang Chun had already thought about this problem before he came, but in his view, the two major sects did not mean to abandon Chunyang Palace now. Since that was the case, there must be something worth discussing about these two so-called conditions. Or perhaps there was something fishy about them. Let's wait and see. Yang Chun couldn't understand it for a while. He certainly didn't think that his cards had been seen through by the two major sects, so he couldn't guess this for the time being. After receiving the medicine Nourishing Gourd, Yang Chun stayed in the sect for the time being. The jade slips and dregs left in the medicine Nourishing Gourd were what Yang Chun dreamed of. Yang Chun needed a period of time to thoroughly digest and absorb these things and lay the foundation for himself to hit the peak of alchemy in the future. It was rare that Yang Chun did not retreat directly, but rushed directly to the medicinal hall and issued a task to the disciples of the sect through the sect to purchase a large number of ordinary medicinal materials for himself to experience that feeling. With Yang Chen's current ability to control fire, coupled with the hundreds of flames in the profound spirit furnace, Yang Chun could do a large number of medicinal materials at one time, but each medicinal material could be dispersed in different areas in the profound spirit furnace and refined with different flames, so that Yang Chun could fully and thoroughly understand the changes in medicinal properties under various circumstances. Without Yang Chen's abnormal spiritual awareness and fire control ability, without the powerful function of the profound spirit furnace, this could not be done at all. Yang Chun needed to consume a lot of medicinal materials, which was based on this consideration. At the beginning, of course, Yang Chun first remembered the contents recorded in the jade slip. At the same time, when reading the jade slips, he also carefully observed the corresponding dregs and wrote down the changes in those medicinal materials. However, after all, these were all recorded on the jade slip. When he really wanted to understand it, Yang Chun still needed to do a lot of experiments to personally experience it. Learning on paper was always shallow. He knew that this matter had to be practiced. If he didn't personally experience these things, no matter how much content he remembered, it was just an armchair strategist. It would take at least a few years to study this part of the content carefully, and the next experiment could be calculated in hundreds of years. Just after Yang Chun had just studied the jade slips in Chunyang Palace for more than a month, Cold Plum Fairy Shi Shanshan and Dancing Snow Fairy Sun Qingxue came to Chunyang Palace together to see Yang Chun. Sun Qingxue's face had a touch of sadness. When she saw Yang Chun, she seemed to be unable to control herself. She plunged into Yang Chun's arms and cried bitterly. There was no demeanor of a dancing snow fairy. I didn't mention the requirement of the 5th grade medicinal pill, it was the sect master who proposed it. Sun Qingxue was crying about this. How could she not be willing to marry Yang Chun? Even if she shared Yang Chun with several other women, Sun Qingxue was willing. It was just that she didn't know why sect master Lu actually put forward such a condition. As a disciple of Blue Cloud sect, Sun Qingxue had to take care of the sect master's face, which made Sun Qingxue in a dilemma. Cold Plum Fairy Shi Shanshan was more assertive than Sun Qingxue. When she saw Yang Chun, she still had the same indifferent look, but there seemed to be something more in her eyes. After Sun Qingxue finished speaking, Shi Shanshan said to Yang Chen, "It is indeed my own request to defeat me. I don't want my dual cultivation companion's cultivation base to always be under me, and to be affected by gossip. This is not good for you or me." Chapter 774. When Shi Shanshan spoke, she had been staring at Yang Chen, as if watching Yang Chen's reaction. However, to Shi Shanshan's disappointment, Yang Chen's face did not have the slightest surprise or grief, as if all this was a matter of course. Sun Qingshue's feelings for Yang Chen were very clear to Yang Chen, and what she said was estimated to be true, but he did not know why the Blue Cloud Sect's sect Master Lu made such a request. This request of Shi Shanshan was also in line with her original character. She had always been strong. If Yang Chen only had a double cultivation with her, he believed that Shi Shanshan would not have any problems, and there would not be any conditions. However, since Yang Chen wanted to bring Sun Qingxue along, and there was also his own master and senior sister, with Shi Shanshan's character, it would not be so easy to accept. Sure enough, Shi Shanshan put forward this reason unyieldingly, and Yang Chen also believed that she would not be lenient in the process of the competition. If there was a chance, she would definitely teach a good lesson to the guy who used and then abandoned. "What's the matter for coming here this time?" Yang Chen appeased the aggrieved Sun Qingxue, and also gave Shi Shanshan a kind smile. After attracting Shi Shanshan's stare, he asked with a smile. The two women came together, certainly not to explain this. There must be some other reasons. Master said that she wants you to see the two senior elders of the sect, to see if their injuries can be treated. Sun Qingxue did not hide anything, and directly said the sect's request. Sect Master Lu said that if you can cure the two elders, the Blue Cloud sect is willing to give a reward. As she said that, Sun Qingxue took out a jade box from the Qiankuan bag and put it in front of Yang Chen, and then said, "As long as you are willing to help, whether it is successful or not, the Blue Cloud sect is deeply grateful." Here, Yang Chen has not done anything, and the Blue Cloud sect has already sent the reward to Sun Qingxue. Looking at this tightly sealed jade box, Yang Chen suddenly had a little other idea in his heart. However, Yang Chen did not say his thoughts at this time, but turned to Shi Shanshan, and asked with some doubts, "Does the green jade Immortal Island also mean this?" Shi Shanshan nodded with a straight face. In the secret plane, the Blue Cloud sect had two masters of the Deshang stage injured, and the green jade Immortal Island had one. There was no need to explain these to Yang Chen. Shi Shanshan also took out a sealed jade box and placed it in front of Yang Chen, but did not say much. The two major sects' methods of doing things were like this. Yang Chen has not yet agreed, and they have already sent things to the door. It seems that Yang Chen will definitely agree. Not long ago, because of Yang Chen's marriage proposal, the two major sects put forward harsh conditions. On the surface, they agreed, but secretly rejected Yang Chen's marriage proposal. Now there was such a scene, and it was still sent by Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan. The implied meaning of this was very intriguing. Yang Chen picked up the two jade boxes with a strange look and looked at them carefully. The two jade boxes were very tightly sealed, and even there was a formation engraved on them. Even spiritual awareness could not pass through, and he did not know what was inside. The two came directly to Yang Chen, and did not even send this request through the sect. There seemed to be some subtle movements in this. Suddenly, Yang Chen laughed and shook his head, which made Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, who followed him, very surprised. Even the visiting Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan did not seem to understand why Yang Chen would laugh. Sun Qingxue's face was full of doubts, and in the eyes of Shi Shanshan, there was also a trace of confusion. So that's how it is. After laughing for a while, Yang Chen stopped laughing and made such a sigh, and then suddenly said, "Sect Master Lu and the Lord of Tantai still think that I, Yang Chen, am too simple?" This made the women even more confused, and they did not know what Yang Chen meant. Gao Yu couldn't help but say, Yang Chen, Fairy sure and Fairy Sun rarely come, don't play such riddles. When the four women met, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling did not show any hostile behavior. The matter of Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan was decided by Gao Yu, and she naturally would not have any conflict. As for Gong Sunling, as long as there was Yang Chen, it was enough, and she would not care much about this. On the contrary, Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan, there was a trace of hostility at first, but it soon disappeared in front of Yang Chen. Now that Gao Yu spoke, Yang Chen no longer beat around the bush with the women, but smiled at Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan, and asked, Sect Master Lu and the Lord of Tantai, there must be other instructions, right? Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were indeed a little surprised this time. The instructions of the sect of both sides, Yang Chen could not be present. How could he know? Looking at the surprise of the two women, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were also a little surprised. Yang Chen has been outside with Gong Sunling, and has never been in contact with outsiders. How could he know that Sect Master Lu and the Lord of Tantai have other instructions? Don't say it, let me guess. Yang Chen stopped Sun Qingxue's intention to speak, and at the same time gave Shi Shanshan a calm expression, and said. All the women were quiet. They also wanted to know what Yang Chen knew, and wanted to know if Yang Chen's guess was right. The head of the palace personally went to propose, although for the time being, Sect Master Lu and the Lord of Tantai did not directly agree, and gave two conditions that seem impossible to complete. Yang Chen narrowed his eyes, as if he had seen through everything, and said over there, everyone thought that the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect refused, but in fact it is not, right? Gao Yu and Gong Sunling exclaimed. They couldn't believe that this was true. Their eyes for confirmation immediately stared at the two women on the opposite side, and seemed to be waiting for them to give the answer. Big Brother Yang is so powerful. Sun Qingxue's eyes were full of admiration, plus this sentence has completely explained that Yang Chen was not wrong, at least in terms of the attitude of the Blue Cloud sect. It was not wrong. Yang Chen looked at Shi Shanshan with a hint of ridicule, waiting for her reply. Shi Shanshan wanted to hold it, but looking at Yang Chen's eyes, she couldn't harden her heart. She just snorted coldly, but did not deny it. Since there was no denial, it showed that the attitude of the Green Jade Immortal Island was the same. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling looked at each other, and then turned to Yang Chen. Their eyes were full of tenderness and admiration. If I didn't guess wrong, these two conditions actually have a time limit, right? Yang Chen smiled and looked at Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan, and asked softly, Is it when I reach the Yuanying stage? Or the Desheng stage? Chapter 775. Desheng stage. Sun Qingxue couldn't hide any secrets in front of Yang Chen. As long as Yang Chen wanted to know, and it was not the kind of secret that couldn't be said, Sun Qingxue would definitely tell Yang Chen. Therefore, when Yang Chen asked, Sun Qingxue said it. Little Shui. Shi Shanshan was very annoyed watching from the side. Sun Qingxue's performance was too simple, so that Yang Chen could get the words out so easily, which made Shi Shanshan very dissatisfied. Up to now, Shi Shanshan still believed that Yang Chen did not completely guess it, but Sun Qingxue's attitude did not know where it was exposed, and Yang Chen discovered it, so he could just hit it. It seemed that the two women had unified their accounts before they came. Now Sun Qingxue fell to Yang Chen so easily, even Sun Qingxue herself felt a little guilty. Under the gaze of Shi Shanshan, she shrunk her neck, as if she didn't dare to look at Shi Shanshan's appearance, and lowered her head. Is the Green Jade Immortal Island also in the Desheng stage? Yang Chen smiled and looked at Shi Shanshan, still waiting for her answer. Humph, even if the island master agrees, if you can't meet the conditions I put forward, you can't expect me to recognize you as my husband. Shi Shanshan's character could not be pulled back. Although she still did not admit defeat, she also answered Yang Chen's question. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling have been somewhat confused. What did the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect want to do? They did not refuse, but put forward two conditions that seemed to be impossible to complete at all. It was said that it was a refusal, but it was secretly set a deadline. As long as Yang Chun could reach the Dasheng stage, he would let the two women marry him. What was the game, the two of them could not understand. That's a good idea. It doesn't hurt our relationship, and it can even help us in the end. It's just that it's a little delayed. Yang Chun smiled and nodded. The most important thing is to let the two sect have a very reasonable way to step down. Sect Master Lu and the Lord of Tantai are really thoughtful. At this moment, Sun Qingxue admired Yang Chun from the bottom of her heart. They didn't say much, but Yang Chun actually guessed so many things. Big Brother Yang was really unpredictable. However, the better Yang Chun behaved, the more infatuated Sun Qingxue seemed to be. Even if you reach the Dasheng stage, if you can't do those two conditions, it's impossible to let the sect nod their heads. Shi Shanshan looked at Sun Qingxue's infatuated expression, and she was angry in her heart. What was so good about Yang Chun, this guy? He was just a playboy, but she still had to give him a good face. Up to now, Shi Shanshan had not given Yang Chun a smile, and she snorted coldly. Looking at Shi Shanshan like this, Yang Chun suddenly laughed, which made Shi Shanshan even more uncomfortable, and once again gave Yang Chun a cold face. However, this face looked in Gao Yu's eyes, but she couldn't help but want to laugh. If she was really angry, where would Shi Shanshan be here? The famous cold plum fairy was not famous for enduring humiliation for the sake of the overall situation. In the end, there was still a little bit of love for Yang Chun in her heart. If I say that I know what is in these two boxes, do you believe it? Yang Chun took the two jade boxes in his hand and asked the two women. I don't believe it. Sun Qingxue was straightforward and said it directly. She had seen this box before, and her spiritual awareness couldn't penetrate it at all. It was tightly sealed, and there was no sound when she shook it. How could she know what was inside? Shi Shanshan snorted coldly in her heart again, and there was no way for Sun Qingxue to hide anything in front of Yang Chun. However, at this time she was also a little curious. She had seen the jade box, and she didn't know what was inside. She wanted to know if Yang Chun could guess it. Inside, there must be a medicinal pill. Yang Chun picked up the jade box of the Blue Cloud sect brought by Sun Qingxue and said with a smile, and it's a 5th-grade medicinal pill. As he said that, he didn't wait for the women to be surprised, and directly opened the sealed talisman. After a flash of light, the seal on the box began to disappear. Yang Chun opened the jade box, revealing a round medicinal pill wrapped in layers of talismans. After opening those seals, a round red medicinal pill appeared on Yang Chun's palm, and the smell of medicine assailed his nose. What was the medicinal pill? No one was interested in it for the time being. Everyone's eyes were focused on the 5 obvious pill patterns on the medicinal pill. 5 pill patterns. It was obvious that this was a 5th-grade medicinal pill. Looking at this medicinal pill that shouldn't have appeared in the mortal world at all, except for Yang Chun, everyone was a little sluggish. The Blue Cloud sect proposed that Yang Chun could refine a 5th-grade medicinal pill, and then gave Yang Chun a 5th-grade medicinal pill. This really made people speechless. Yang Chun was thinking about other things. This medicinal pill was just the most common qi-nourishing pill. However, after the 5th-grade refinement, it had become a rare panacea. Yang Chun was just curious, how did the Blue Cloud sect get this 5th-grade medicinal pill? In the history of the mortal world, there was no 5th-grade pill refinement master. This was recognized by everyone. So where did this 5th-grade qi-nourishing pill come from? In an instant, Yang Chun thought of the descent of the consciousness of a clone. There was no such thing in the mortal world, but the heavenly court had it, and the descent of the consciousness of a clone, the Taishaman could afford to play, and the Blue Cloud sect could also afford to play. In addition to this reason, Yang Chun couldn't think of any other possibilities. The Blue Cloud Sect's method of loosening the reins to grasp was indeed able to let Yang Chun and Chunyang Palace be hit first, and then feel grateful, thus firmly tying them to their chariot. It was a good method. He put the medicinal pill into the newly acquired medicine nourishing gourd. The sealed talisman had been opened. If it was not properly kept, the medicinal qi would dissipate. Although this was only a qi nourishing pill, it was a 5th grade refining pill, but it could let Yang Chun learn a lot from it. Green Jade Immortal Island, in this box, I think, there must be something that can make me defeat you after I cultivate. Yang Chun picked up the second jade box and said to Shi Shanshan. Without waiting for Shi Shanshan's reaction, Yang Chun opened the jade box directly. Unexpectedly, there were 2 things in it. One was a refined jade lamp that preserved the fire seed, and the other was a jade slip. 9 secluded core fire, 6th grade fire seed. The green jade Immortal Island is really big. After seeing the fire seed, even Yang Chun couldn't help but be surprised. The 9 secluded core fire was the advanced upgraded version of the core fire that Yang Chun currently has. The grade reached the 6th grade, and it was also a 4th grade fire. Apart from the 7th grade pure Yang True Fire that Yang Chun was now keeping, this was already the highest grade of fire seed. As for the jade slip, it recorded the method of collecting the 9 secluded core fire. For Yang Chun, this jade slip was actually dispensable. Relying on this, you may not be able to defeat me. Seeing this, Shi Shanshan's face still did not change, but she coldly dropped a sentence to Yang Chun. Chapter 776. The more Shi Shanshan said this, in fact, the more she expected Yang Chun to defeat herself, but she had never realized it. Looking at Yang Chun staring at her and smiling, Shi Shanshan was also a little embarrassed and couldn't help but say angrily, "If you intend to rely on this cheating method to achieve the 2 conditions, even if the sect agrees, don't expect me to admit it. You're right, in fact, even if I absorb the 6th grade fire seed, I may not be your opponent." When Yang Chun spoke, he still had a smile on his face, which made Shi Shanshan always have an impulse to fight against him, but listening to what he said seemed to have other meanings. She suppressed her anger and waited to hear Yang Chun's next words. "However, don't forget, the condition you mentioned is just for one person to defeat you." Yang Chun smiled again and said slowly, "But you never said when I would defeat you." "No matter when, the result is the same." Shi Shanshan was very proud and slightly raised her chin. The Cold Plum Fairy only had some inner demons when Yang Chun went there last time. After overcoming her inner demons, her strength had improved again, vaguely reaching the realm of the late Jedon stage, and would soon break through to the peak Jedon stage. This was also the capital that she could be proud of. "Is it the same when you seriously injured me?" Yang Chun raised his eyebrows and looked at Shi Shanshan with a smile and asked, "Don't tell me that you have the confidence to win against any opponent, so you will never be injured." The reason why the Cold Plum Fairy was able to make a name for herself in her previous life was absolutely not because she bullied the weak, but because she was always able to challenge enemies that were stronger than her and win. As for being injured, it was more common, but every time she was injured, it also made Shi Shanshan more powerful. Learning from battle has always been Shi Shanshan's strength. She didn't expect that Yang Chun would propose such a method. Even if Shi Shanshan wanted to argue, she couldn't. She just never thought that Yang Chun would get along with such a method to deal with the conditions she put forward. In her eyes, a one-on-one face-to-face battle was fair, and he would never be so shameless. But what Yang Chun said was not wrong at all. It did not even violate her own requirements. One-on-one, yes, face-to-face, no, but in this case, the seriously injured Shi Shanshan was very likely not the opponent of Yang Chun. She originally thought that she could make things difficult for Yang Chun. After Yang Chun's words, suddenly the condition became the most ridiculous joke and was easily broken by Yang Chun. In this case, it seemed that Yang Chun already had a 5th grade medicinal pill in his hands, and he could also defeat Shi Shanshan. Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue seemed to become Yang Chen's wife. It was not so far away. Big Brother Yang, the sect master, said that if you want to use this medicinal pill to complete the conditions, you must wait until after the Deshang stage. Sun Qingxue interjected with some grievances. There was a trace of discomfort in her heart. In fact, the Green Jade Immortal Island also had the same conditions. If he used the 9 secluded core fire to defeat Shi Shanshan, he must wait until after the Deshang stage to marry Shi Shanshan. However, Yang Chen proposed such a solution. With the temperament of Shi Shanshan challenging masters, the chance of injury was great. Yang Chen would soon be able to meet the conditions of Shi Shanshan and marry Shi Shanshan, but Sun Qingxue could only wait until Yang Chen reached the Deshang stage before he could marry her. Even if Yang Chen's cultivation was extremely fast, it would take at least hundreds of years. In this case, the little girl Sun Qingxue certainly felt a little unbalanced and couldn't help but complain. After Shi Shanshan was speechless by Yang Chen, and then heard Sun Qingxue's words, her face sank again, and she said coldly to Yang Chen, if you use cheating to achieve the conditions, I will look down on you for a lifetime. Little Shui will also look down on you. When speaking, Sun Qingxue's tone was cold, unprecedented. These words were indeed Shi Shanshan's heartfelt words. Although Yang Chen's method did not violate her conditions, it would definitely make her despise him. Sun Qingxue originally wanted to say something, but when she heard Shi Shanshan's words and saw the cold light in Shi Shanshan's eyes, she didn't say what she wanted to say after all. She just turned to the side of Yang Chen, and looked at Yang Chen, and nodded pitifully. The reluctance on her face seemed to be explaining to Yang Chen that this was not her original intention, but she had to stand on the side of Shi Shanshan. Yang Chen, if you really use this method. Just after Shi Shanshan said these words, Gao Yu next to Yang Chen also said, I will be unhappy too. Junior brother, you should be a great hero. You should not use this way. Gong Sunling and Yang Chen watched Yang Chen kill the devil of the nascent soul stage and kill the master of the nascent soul stage. Although she knew that Yang Chen was teasing Shi Shanshan, she still followed Gao Yu's words. For women, 2 had promised to marry him. One wanted to marry but was prevented by the conditions of the sect, and the other was somewhat dissatisfied with his philandering and must be defeated by him. All 4 of them had the same attitude at the moment, as if they had formed an alliance. The words of the 2 women made Shi Shanshan look at the 2 women changed a little and softened a lot. At this moment, the 4 women seemed to share a common enemy and stood on the opposite side of their husband. Although your husband isn't an indomitable person, he has never slacked off or cheated. At this time, Yang Chen, of course, had to show his own attitude. He must not be looked down upon by his own women. If I want to marry you, I will marry you in a dignified manner, and I will never let you feel dissatisfied in your hearts. Yang Chen's chest was straight. The 2 conditions you proposed, I will never use cheating methods. When these words were said, except for Sun Qingxue who was a little worried, the other 3 women's eyes were glowing. They have never seen Yang Chen so heroic in order to marry them, and they were naturally happy in their hearts. Little Shui Shanshan, you can now inform the sect that I agreed. 3 years later, I will go to the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect to heal the elders. Yang Chen said quickly, tomorrow at this time, you come here. What? Sun Qingxue asked anxiously. Accompany me in alchemy. After Yang Chen gave Sun Qingxue a smile, he turned to Shi Shanshan and said with the same smile, Shanshan, I will give you 3 years to recharge and attack the realm. After 3 years, I want to challenge you 10 times, I want you to marry me willingly. Chapter 777. The 4 women were a little surprised by Yang Chen's words. Yang Chen wanted to refine elixirs, but he also wanted to give Shi Shanshan 3 years to recuperate, and then challenge 10 battles. What was he going to do? If it was to defeat Shi Shanshan, 1 battle was enough, why 10 battles? And in 3 years, what kind of elixir was he going to refine? No one knew what Yang Chen planned, but Yang Chen promised to heal several elders, which was a real favor. This must be reported back to the sect. The two women did not dare to neglect. They did not come alone. They immediately arranged for their own people to report back. After a day's rest, the two women followed Yang Chen to Yang Chen's dan room. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling had accompanied Yang Chen for several times. It was not surprising that Yang Chen could refine elixirs, but it was the first time for Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan to see Yang Chen refine elixirs. The two seemed to feel very fresh. Gong Sunling needed to travel around to refine the geographical map of mountains and rivers. Yang Chen had to retreat, but she had to go out. At least she had to visit all the territories of the Dao sects and draw all the geographical maps of the Dao sections. Anyway, Gong Sunling had the praying mantis puppet and the protection of the ship, plus the elixir given by Yang Chen. It was enough to deal with most of the dangers of the Dao sections. Before Yang Chen was going to refine elixirs, Gong Sunling said goodbye to Yang Chen, Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan, and several core Jidan disciples of Chunyang Palace set out on the road to gain experience. When Gong Sunling came back this time, she also wanted to accept a few potential apprentices. She was already in the middle Jidan stage, which was enough to meet the conditions for accepting apprentices. Gao Yu wanted to refine the dragon horn flying sword. Although she had been in the sect, she had to temper it with her master at all times, and also perfect the design of the dragon horn flying sword. Therefore, the matter of accompanying Yang Chen to refine elixirs was handed over to Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan. The two women saw Yang Chen refine elixirs for the first time and felt curious. However, Yang Chen did not start to refine elixirs at first, but gave the two women a first-grade inner sensing pill and a second-grade inner sensing pill, and let them take turns to take. Everyone knew that the second-grade inner sensing pill was Yang Chen's unique medicinal pill. Knowing that he still had a lot in his hands, the two women were not polite. After Yang Chen said that he wanted to marry her, Shi Shanshan's face was also a lot better to Yang Chen. Although she still had that frosty face, there was no longer that kind of targeting. After the two inner sensing pills were taken, the two women quickly noticed that there was something wrong with the spiritual power in their bodies. Whether it was Sun Qingxue or Shi Shanshan, they were geniuses with excellent talent in cultivation. After discovering the problem, they naturally made targeted adjustments. Just 2 medicinal pills were enough for the two women to save at least 20 years of hard work in the future. After all, it was by no means an easy task to adjust their previous cultivation deviations, and it was even difficult to find this. With the inner sensing pill, the earlier the two women found out, the easier it would be to correct the deviations, and the higher their future achievements would be. Shi Shanshan seemed to understand what Yang Chen meant by letting her recharge. These 3 years were just enough for Shi Shanshan to adjust the spiritual power of her whole body to the best. She was now very much looking forward to what kind of combat power Yang Chen would show at that time. Next, Yang Chen still did not immediately start alchemy, but asked the two women in detail about the injuries of the injured elders in their sect. Because this time it was the two women who came to ask Yang Chen for help, so before they set off, they also went to see the injured elders. Everyone's injuries and their own feelings were told to the two women. When Yang Chen asked, they naturally relayed it in detail. The injuries of the elders, it's better for you to see it with your own eyes before making a judgment, right? Shi Shanshan said this, but she still had some doubts. If you don't see it with your own eyes or even make a diagnosis, it would be difficult to make a correct judgment. I just need to know if a certain kind of medicinal pill can treat it. Yang Chen replied with a smile, and then after thinking about it, he took out the profound spirit furnace. Even if Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were not good at alchemy, but when they saw Yang Chen's profound spirit furnace, they still couldn't help but cheer. The high grade of Yang Chen's profound spirit furnace made the two women somewhat unable to believe it. In any case, they couldn't believe that Yang Chen, a cultivator in the early Jidan stage, could refine an alchemy furnace to such a high level. In this regard, Yang Chun certainly would not explain it, but one by one, he took out the medicinal materials he needed from the medicine garden. Lingji mushrooms that were more than 1,000 years old were directly taken out, more than 20 pieces, and other fresh auxiliary medicinal materials that were more than 1,000 years old were also fresh in front of the two women. They have already seen the medicinal materials that were used to refine the questioning inner heart pill. Although these things that were less than 2,000 years old were precious, they still did not put them in the eyes of the two women. Watching Yang Chun prepare a lot of medicinal materials, and then casually throw them into the profound spirit furnace like a pile of rags, Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan both widened their eyes and stared carefully. Yang Chun, as a senior alchemist master, was not an illusion, but a real thing, so the two women really wanted to see if Yang Chun's alchemy technique was as magical as people outside speculated. The medicinal pill that Yang Chun wanted to refine was the Lingji mushroom jade pill. This kind of medicinal pill was the best holy medicine for healing injuries. The injuries below the yuanying stage, as long as there was still a breath, it could pull people back from the edge of the netherworld. The last time Gao Yu was in danger in the 100,000 mountains, she saved her life by relying on the Lingji mushroom jade pill. The higher the realm of the cultivator, the more difficult it was to recover. Generally speaking, the master of the Deshang stage had a high cultivation base and would not be easily injured, but once injured, it would definitely be a big trouble. This Lingji mushroom jade pill was only effective for the injuries below the yuanying stage. If the cultivation base was higher, it would not be so effective. For the masters of the Deshang stage, it was naturally useless. However, whether it was useful or not was relative. The first-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill was of no use, but this does not mean that the fifth-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill was useless. That's right, Yang Chun was going to refine the fifth-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill in front of the two women to heal the injured three Deshang stage elders of the two major sects. Asking about the condition of the injuries of the three elders was to judge whether the fifth-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill could cure their injuries or not. Fortunately, in Yang Chen's view, the fifth-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill was enough. No one would know that Yang Chen was already a sixth-grade alchemist master before he was reborn. The sixth-grade alchemist master of the heavenly court, apart from the fact that the cultivation base was still far worse than that of the great principal golden immortal, the experience and techniques of alchemy were completely no problem. Coupled with the basic knowledge learned from the jade slip recently, not to mention the fifth-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill, even if it was the sixth grade, it was not a problem for Yang Chen. Chapter 778. In the eyes of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, Yang Chen's alchemy was absolutely dazzling. A large pile of medicinal materials was thrown into the pill furnace, and under the control of Yang Chen, they were separated into an area, and then different flames emerged to refine a certain medicinal material separately. If this process happened in sequence, it would not be surprising. After each medicinal material was refined, it would be added to the pill furnace at the right time. This was the common sense understanding of all cultivators of the alchemy process. However, Yang Chen's approach subverted the common sense of the two women. All medicinal materials were refined at the same time, and the most outrageous thing was that the flame used for refining each kind of medicinal material was actually different. Yang Chen had many kinds of fire seeds in his hands, which the two women knew. In order to refine the questioning inner heart pill, the two major sects alone gave Yang Chen no less than 100 kinds of fire seed. Different medicinal materials were refined with different fire seeds. This was also common sense, and there was no doubt about it. Some medicinal materials were suitable for fierce fire, some were suitable for slow fire, and some needed yin fire, and so on. However, controlling several different flames at the same time and refining dozens of medicinal materials at the same time, this has exceeded the imagination of the two women. How many times did it take to accurately grasp the refining of all the medicinal materials? Not only did he control different flames, but different flames also had different degrees of heat, and different degrees of heat also corresponded to different medicinal materials, and even a medicinal material also needed different flames and different degrees of heat. This alone was enough to make the two women marvel at Yang Chen's alchemy technique. The two women were both masters of cultivation, and naturally understood what such exquisite control meant. Even Shi Shanshan seemed to have a new evaluation of Yang Chen's combat effectiveness. The refining of medicinal materials was no longer difficult for Yang Chen, and it even happened to verify the things recorded on the jade slips in the medicine nourishing gourd. Of course, Yang Chen used the correct condensing method this time, rather than deliberately making mistakes to know what the consequences of mistakes would be. The next refining, the two women could not understand it. However, the principle was very clear. It was nothing more than adding the right herbs to the furnace at the right time. It was just that Yang Chen's method was slightly different. In fact, there was not much difference. The uniqueness of the profound spirit furnace and the subtlety of Yang Chen's fire control. Yes, Yang Chen could use the flame to surround the medicinal materials and temporarily store them in a corner without damaging the medicinal materials. When it was time to add the medicinal materials, he would control the addition of the refined medicinal liquid. Under the watchful eyes of the two women, Yang Chen soon completed the refinement of the Lingji mushroom jade dew pill. Because of the improvement of the quality of the profound spirit furnace, the refining of each kind of medicinal pill can automatically increase a grade. If Yang Chen took out the pill at this time, Yang Chen could easily get the second-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill. However, this was not the purpose of Yang Chen. Yang Chen quietly began the second-grade refining. The two women only knew that Yang Chen was refining a kind of medicinal pill that could alleviate and stabilize the injuries of the injured elders. No one would think that Yang Chen was directly attacking the fifth-grade refining. It's not that the two women didn't think of it, but this has exceeded the imagination of the two women. There has never been a fifth-grade alchemist master in the mortal world. Yang Chen was a small Jidan stage junior. Even if he was strong, it was already the limit to attack the fourth grade. How could he carry out the fifth-grade refining? Even those famous senior alchemist masters in history, when they attacked the fourth-grade alchemist master, they only chose the simplest qi-nourishing pill for the fourth-grade refining. Even the predecessor of the Blue Cloud Sex consciousness clone, didn't he only refine the fifth-grade qi-nourishing pill? Who could think that Yang Chen used so many millennium elixirs? At first glance, it was a high-level healing medicine, and he still wanted to attack the fifth-grade refining. The two women only regarded Yang Chen's alchemy as an ordinary alchemy. Anyway, they never accompanied Yang Chen to refine medicinal pills. In addition, they had just taken the inner sensing pill. They could just watch Yang Chen's alchemy and think of ways to solve some deviations in their cultivation. The second-grade inner sensing pill really shocked the two women. After personally experiencing the effect, they finally understood why Qiao Ming and Su Qingxin could rely on a medicinal pill to cross their tribulation and form their nascent soul. At that critical moment, the help provided by this medicinal pill could definitely make people's cultivation have a qualitative change. In a blink of an eye, a year had passed. Yang Chen has completed the second-grade refining and turned to attack the third-grade refining. Outside the pill furnace, they couldn't see the situation inside the pill furnace at all. The two women still thought that Yang Chen had not finished refining, and no one urged him, just quietly accompanied him. The calm alchemy seemed to have no waves, only Yang Chen's look became more and more focused, and his expression became more and more cautious. In the third-grade refining, Yang Chen could still control it relatively normally, but when it came to the fourth-grade refining, there was some trouble. In the end, Yang Chen's cultivation base was too low. In his previous life, Yang Chen was a sixth-grade alchemist master, and he could easily refine the medicinal pills of these mortals. However, that was based on his own cultivation base of the great principle golden immortal. Now Yang Chen was only in the early Jedan stage. Even if because of the cultivation of the Yin and Yang 5 elements secret art, Yang Chen's spiritual power cultivation base was close to the masters of the Yuanying stage, but compared to the great principle golden immortal, it was almost the difference between heaven and earth, and even a finger of the great principle golden immortal could not be compared. In this case, it was still difficult to perfectly control the fourth grade refining. Fortunately, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness had reached the level of the middle Deshang stage, and he was barely able to control the situation. The caution and concentration shown by Yang Chen made the two women understand that the refining of this medicinal pill was at a critical moment. The two women no longer cared about their own affairs, but carefully guarded Yang Chen, trying not to let Yang Chen be disturbed in any way. Although this was the site of Chunyang Palace, and theoretically, no one would rush in, the two women were still extremely careful. At the same time, they also had a layer of worry for Yang Chen, not for fear that Yang Chen would be in any danger, but for fear that his refining would fail. When he was concentrating on something, it was also the most attractive time. Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan had enough good feelings for Yang Chen. At this moment, they were even more attracted by Yang Chen's concentration. Sun Qingxue had long been in love with Yang Chen. If it wasn't for the request of the sect, she might have agreed to become Yang Chen's wife. And Shi Shanshan, when watching Yang Chen so dedicated to refining the medicinal pill, seemed to have a better understanding of Yang Chen's efforts. Success was never accidental. Yang Chen could become such an outstanding alchemist master, and there must be something extraordinary about him. Looking at Yang Chen's face that was already faintly sweating, Shi Shanshan's heart suddenly softened a lot. Chapter 779. Time passed quickly, especially when Yang Chen was focused on alchemy. He would not notice the passage of time at all. Now the fourth grade refining of the medicinal pill has been completed, but Yang Chen is still continuing. Although the profound spirit furnace could automatically improve the efficiency of the first grade refining, Yang Chen still wanted to be a little more safe, at least half of the fifth grade refining, so that the success rate of the pill would be higher. In 2 years and 8 months, Yang Chen has felt that the medicinal pill in the pill furnace has faintly shown signs of the fifth grade, so he stopped. Coupled with the effect of the profound spirit furnace, this batch of Lingji mushroom jade pill was already at the level of the fifth grade. If he wanted to strengthen it, Yang Chen was afraid that once the sixth grade medicinal pill came out, it might cause a storm in the entire Dao sections. The fifth grade medicinal pill was enough to shock the world. Yang Chen was not a person who was willing to be in the limelight. As long as enough alchemy advantages were maintained, it was enough. There was no need to make people surprised to feel that he would pose a threat. In addition, even if Yang Chen wanted to complete a higher grade refining, he was also powerless. With his current cultivation base, it was impossible. Now it was promoted to the fifth grade by the profound spirit furnace. In fact, the essence was still the fourth grade refining, but the medicinal pill itself was the Lingji mushroom jade pill, which was much more advanced than the qi replenishing pill. The fourth grade was the current true level of Yang Chen. If he wanted to carry out a higher grade refining, Yang Chen probably estimated that at least he had to reach the late Yuanying stage, or even higher. The gap between the fourth grade and the fifth grade was by no means a big gap, just like the earth-shattering difference in the effect of medicine. To reach the fifth grade medicinal pill, it could almost be called a real spirit pill, the medicinal pill that would only appear in the spiritual world. The injuries of the 3 Deshang stage elders, the fifth grade Lingji mushroom jade pill, had only one effect: the medicine would cure the disease. In the eyes of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, after Yang Chen performed a series of dazzling pill-taking techniques, 5 golden pills were formed in an instant. Then, they flashed with a blinding light and flew into Yang Chen's hand. Yang Chen first checked it carefully and even placed the elixir into his sea of consciousness to observe it. Then, he nodded in satisfaction and handed one to Sun Qingxue. Big brother Yang, the pill has been refined? Sun Qingxue asked anxiously without even looking at the result. After seeing Yang Chen nod, he lowered his head and carefully examined the elixir in his hand. Ah! A long scream came out from Sun Qingxue's mouth, startling Shi Shanshan, who was waiting to ask what kind of pill it was. Hastily, she asked, "What happened? What's wrong?" Sun Qingxue handed the elixir in her hand to Shi Shanshan in a sluggish manner. Her mouth was still slightly open. She couldn't believe what she saw. How could there be 5 pill patterns on the golden elixir? Shi Shanshan thought that something had happened to Sun Qingxue. After taking the elixir, she just carefully looked around and suddenly fell into horror. This was actually a 5th-grade elixir. How was this possible? Shi Shanshan almost screamed like Sun Qingxue, but she still forced herself to hold back. For fear that she was wrong, she took the elixir and looked at it several times. Only then did she determine that this was not a few elixir patterns that Yang Chen had casually drawn on it. It was not a fake elixir pattern, but a real 5 elixir pattern. I said, "I will marry you fair and square." Yang Chen's extremely confident words came out of his mouth. Facing Sun Qingxue, Yang Chen stretched out his right hand. 5th-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill, little Shui, marry me. Sun Qingxue was immersed in a great surprise. Yang Chen's words woke her up from the surprise, and then she heard her dream of Yang Chen's marriage proposal. She fell into ecstasy again, no longer caring about anything else. She put her little hand in Yang Chen's hand. Yang Chen just gently pulled, and Sun Qingxue's delicate body fell into Yang Chen's arms. She hugged Yang Chen tightly, and tears of joy flowed down involuntarily. Stretching out his big hand, Yang Chen gently held Sun Qingxue's beautiful face. His big fingers gently stroked Sun Qingxue's cheek, and gently wiped away her hot tears. Then, in Sun Qingxue's happy and shy eyes, he kissed Sun Qingxue's red lip. With a moan, Sun Qingxue instantly fell into great happiness. She felt as if she was already in heaven. The wonderful taste made her almost unable to control herself. Without the slightest struggle, Sun Qingxue obediently closed her eyes and enjoyed the hot kiss from her beloved. Shi Shanshan witnessed everything from the side, but she did not have the slightest intention to stop it. According to the conditions set by the Blue Cloud sect, Sun Qingxue was already Yang Chen's wife, and only a ceremony was missing. What reason did she have to stop the intimacy between Yang Chen and Sun Qingxue? However, this kind of scene that made even Shi Shanshan feel a little shy did not make Shi Shanshan retreat. She was still immersed in the fact that Yang Chen refined a 5th revolution pill in front of them, unable to extricate herself. How was this possible? How was this possible? How did he manage to concoct a 5th revolution pill? However, everything happened in front of her eyes, and everything was the truth. Now, Shi Shanshan finally understood why Yang Chen asked her and Sun Qingxue to accompany him in refining pills. It was so that they could witness this moment with their own eyes. If Shi Shanshan did not see it with her own eyes, even if Yang Chen took out the 5th revolution pill, Shi Shanshan might have suspected that Yang Chen cheated and used the pill given by the Blue Cloud sect. Now that everything happened in front of her eyes, no matter how much Shi Shanshan wanted to say that it was impossible, she could not say it out loud. Looking at the blissful expression on Sun Qingxue's face as she was hugged and kissed in Yang Chen's arms, Shi Shanshan suddenly felt a little envious. If she was the one being hugged and kissed in Yang Chen's arms at this moment, what kind of feeling would it be? At the thought of this, Shi Shanshan suddenly woke up and hurriedly expelled this kind of thought from her mind. How could I think of this? Yang Chen has not fulfilled the conditions that I proposed and defeated me in a fair and square manner. Even if he had solved the conditions of Sun Qingxue, if he wanted me, Shi Shanshan would definitely not go easy on me. As this thought flashed across her mind, Shi Shanshan suddenly had another question. Yang Chen asked me to recuperate for 3 years and then challenge me for 10 rounds. What does that mean? Could it be that Yang Chen wants to find an opportunity to defeat me in 10 rounds? Yes, that must be it. As long as he can defeat me once, I will have fulfilled my conditions and marry Yang Chen. Looking at Sun Qingshue's extremely surprised and happy expression, Shi Shanshan suddenly hesitated. Should I go easy on Yang Chen? If I only go easy on him a little, perhaps others would not be able to tell? Chapter 780. The movement here naturally alarmed Gao Yu, who had been paying attention to this place. Soon, when Gao Yu saw the 5th-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill, she inevitably fell into a sluggish state. Even if she knew that Yang Chen was likely to reach the realm of the 5th-grade alchemist master, Gao Yu did not expect that Yang Chen had reached this level now. For a while, Gao Yu was already a little silly, and suddenly she didn't know how to describe herself as a disciple and a husband. Genius? Or an evildoer? Yang Chen did not let Shi Shanshan wait for a long time. After refining the 5th-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill, he just meditated to recover for a day and a night, and then took Shi Shanshan to an unknown place. Whether it was Gao Yu or Sun Qingxue, they all knew that Yang Chen and Shi Shanshan went out. It must be Yang Chen challenging Shi Shanshan. However, neither of the two women followed. Sun Qingxue firmly remembered that when she and Yang Chen broke into the secret plane, they were still in the foundation stage. Yang Chen killed 5 peak Yuanying stage praying mantis monster beasts in an instant. Although Sister Shanshan was powerful, compared with 5 praying mantises, there should still be some gap. As for Gao Yu, she never doubted Yang Chen's combat effectiveness. The corpse of the second city master has been refined into a puppet and placed in her Qiankuan bag. Gao Yu never doubted the result of the challenge between Yang Chen and Shi Shanshan. It was estimated that the head of the palace did not feel anything about Shi Shanshan's request. They were just worried about the requirements of the Blue Cloud Sect's 5th-grade medicinal pill. But now Yang Chen only took a short period of 3 years, and it was all solved during the time of alchemy. It seemed that Gao Yu must also inform the sect to prepare for Yang Chen's marriage. Both of them seemed to understand Shi Shanshan's pride. They didn't follow her because they were afraid that Shi Shanshan would lose face if she lost. However, in Shi Shanshan's eyes, this action had the opposite meaning. Gao Yu and Sun Qingxue were already Yang Chen's wives in name. They probably didn't want to see their husband lose face. In the place where the two fought, Yang Chen chose a small valley in the Meiqing mountain that was not very noticeable. Throwing a set of array flags made by Gong Sunling into the surroundings, it formed a powerful maze array. Outsiders would not be able to find out what was happening in the array. Are you ready? Yang Chen stood in front of Shi Shanshan empty-handed. He looked at Shi Shanshan, who was also empty-handed, and asked in a deep voice. Shi Shanshan nodded and didn't say anything, but it seemed that she had already gathered all the spiritual power in her body. The first time, Yang Chen stretched out a finger. Buzz, Shi Shanshan was waiting for Yang Chen's attack. Suddenly, a dull bell sound seemed to ring directly from the soul. Almost without any reaction, Shi Shanshan's spiritual awareness was shaken, her eyes were dark, and she fainted. She didn't know how long it took for Shi Shanshan to wake up from her coma. As soon as she regained consciousness, Shi Shanshan bounced up from the ground and noticed that there was nothing wrong with her body, so she began to observe the surroundings. Yang Chen was sitting not far away, and Shi Shanshan only now discovered that she had just gotten up from a wooden bed. It seemed that she had been lying on a wooden bed. Thinking of her own coma, Shi Shanshan had a rich combat experience. How could she not know that Yang Chen had launched a spiritual awareness attack? It's just that, relying on a magic weapon to make herself unconscious in an instant, Shi Shanshan really didn't want to admit this failure. Take a break, let's continue. Yang Chen seemed to have already seen through Shi Shanshan's thoughts. He just gave a gentle smile and handed a calming pill to Shi Shanshan. This calming pill could quickly calm people down. For the current Sher Shanshan, it was perfect. Again, Sher Shanshan did not refuse Yang Chen's kindness. She directly swallowed the pill and sat down to meditate. Soon, Sher Shanshan rushed towards Yang Chen and issued another challenge. The second time, Yang Chen stretched out 2 fingers. This time, Sher Shanshan did not give Yang Chen any chance. Yang Chen's voice had just fallen when Sher Shanshan's flying sword had already chopped down on Yang Chen's body. Of course, it was Yang Chen's thigh that was chopped off. This kind of challenge, Sher Shanshan would certainly not be directed at Yang Chen. Ding, a crisp sound of metal impact sounded. Yang Chen's body stood in the same place without moving. The flying sword chopped on his body and was directly bounced off. Yang Chen's body did not have the slightest injury. Ding ding ding, Sher Shanshan did not believe it. She kept chopping down with her sword. This time, not only his thigh, but his waist, abdomen, and chest were also attacked. Unfortunately, no matter how Sher Shanshan urged the flying sword, Yang Chen's body was like a piece of steel, without the slightest damage. Don't you still have a praying mantis puppet? Let's attack together. Yang Chen stood in the same place and was hit by Sher Shanshan's sword. He even reminded Sher Shanshan to use the Yuanying stage puppet to fight. Sher Shanshan's heart was also provoked by Yang Chen's words, and she released the praying mantis puppet without hesitation. As soon as the praying mantis was released, its huge forearm was like a sharp knife, and it chopped down on Yang Chen's body. Unfortunately, even if it was the praying mantis puppet at the peak Yuanying stage, when it chopped down on Yang Chen's body, it was still useless. Except for a few low sounds, there was no reaction at all. How could this be? Sher Shanshan was really shocked for a while. She didn't even react when Yang Chen came forward. It wasn't until Yang Chen put a flying sword on her neck that Sher Shanshan realized that she seemed to have lost again this time. According to the Green Jade Immortal Island, you should already be my wife. Yang Chen put away the flying sword and stood in front of Sher Shanshan. He gently lifted Sher Shanshan's chin with his hand. In Sher Shanshan's puzzled eyes, he gently kissed her lip. Sher Shanshan's eyes suddenly widened, and her hands directly pushed Yang Chen out. She subconsciously reached out to wipe her lips, and her heart was full of anger. You just rely on a defensive magic weapon, it's not a fair win. Even if she was defeated twice in a row in the hands of Yang Chen, Sher Shanshan was still somewhat unconvinced. In particular, Yang Chen simply relied on a defensive magic weapon this time, and took advantage of the opportunity of her shock to succeed, which made her even more unconvinced. Okay, I don't need a defensive magic weapon. Yang Chen quickly answered, directly stretched out 3 fingers, and said to Sher Shanshan, the third time. When Yang Chen shouted for the third time, Sher Shanshan's figure had already rushed up. She firmly believed that once Yang Chen had no defensive magic weapon, he would definitely not be her opponent. Purring, a red smoke suddenly burst in front of Sher Shanshan's eyes, and then Sher Shanshan noticed a sense of danger. A few vines suddenly entangled her hands and feet like snake. Chapter 781. It happened so suddenly that Sher Shanshan didn't even think about it. She used the flying sword to cut the vines. However, as soon as she thought about it, she suddenly noticed that she began to feel dizzy, and the vines seemed to have some small thorns that pierced into her body in an instant. Just this time, Sher Shanshan had no strength in her whole body for a while, and the flying sword in the air also fell to the ground with a clang. Her body began to fall softly, and then fell into the arms of Yang Chen. So what about this time? Yang Chen skillfully picked up Sher Shanshan's body horizontally, and then kissed Sher Shanshan's lips again. Sher Shanshan didn't even have the strength to struggle, and could only let Yang Chen do what he wanted. At the moment when the lips touched, the red smoke and the vines disappeared without a trace, and a green vine appeared quickly, circling around Sher Shanshan's body, and the feeling of soreness quickly dissipated. When the body recovered its strength, Sher Shanshan pushed Yang Chen away again. She stared at Yang Chen with some dissatisfaction and asked, "What is that?" "Blood phantom vine." Yang Chen did not hide it from Shi Shanshan and replied quickly. Hearing that it was a murderous creature like the blood phantom vine, Shi Shanshan couldn't help but be shocked. However, after checking her body, she found that she was unharmed except for a few small holes in her hands and feet, so she was relieved. However, being controlled by this kind of murderous creature, Shi Shanshan was still somewhat inexplicably uncomfortable. She stared at Yang Chen. Although she didn't say much, the expression on her face and eyes clearly showed her dissatisfaction. Well, the fourth time. This time, Yang Chen extended 4 fingers. Shi Shanshan's figure suddenly moved, and a sword light quickly slashed towards Yang Chen. Not far away, the mantis puppet also waved its arms and rushed forward. Yang Chen opened his hand, and a long shadow instantly flew out. The long shadow was as agile as a living creature in the air. With a few twists and turns, the mantis puppet not far away was firmly entangled. When the mantis puppet stopped moving, Shi Shanshan could see clearly that there was a 5-colored rope wrapped around the puppet. With the power of the peak yuanying stage of the praying mantis puppet, it couldn't compete with the rope wrapped around its body. Even if Shi Shanshan controlled the praying mantis puppet to use its greatest strength, there was nothing she could do about the rope. However, the experienced Shi Shanshan knew that this was not the time to be in a daze. It was because of her own absent-mindedness that Yang Chen took advantage of it, so even if the puppet had been restrained, Shi Shanshan's flying sword still rushed to Yang Chen. Ding! Shi Shanshan's flying sword was blocked by a flying sword that appeared out of thin air. Shi Shanshan didn't even think about turning the sword in another direction, but the result was the same. Another flying sword appeared and blocked Shi Shanshan's flying sword again. Next, a lot of flying swords appeared around Yang Chen, and quickly formed a sharp sword array, covering Shi Shanshan in it. As a sword cultivator, Shi Shanshan certainly understood the power of the sword array. However, there were flaws in any array, and this sword array would be no exception. Shi Shanshan tried many times, but to no avail. 49 flying swords flew up and down around Shi Shanshan's body, as if the flying swords wouldn't react as long as Shi Shanshan didn't attack. Shi Shanshan stared at the flying swords for a long time before she made up her mind. Relying on the sharpness of her protective magic weapon, she moved toward Yang Chen. This movement seemed to have ignited the sword array. 49 flying swords instantly turned into fierce, sharp weapons, slashing violently at Shi Shanshan's body. Clang, clang, clang. With just 3 sounds, the protective armor that Shi Shanshan relied on to defend herself was pierced by the flying sword. Next, at least 4 flying swords pierced through the broken protective armor. However, the moment the blades touched Shi Shanshan's skin, they all stopped. No matter how proud Shi Shanshan was, she understood that Yang Chen had shown mercy. He could only suddenly put away the flying sword and stood in place, motionless. Yang Chen did not withdraw the sword array, but walked over slowly and kissed Shi Shanshan's lips, who was standing close to the 49 flying swords, and then waved his hand to remove the sword array and the rope that tied the praying mantis puppet. The rope was clearly the 5-element rope hook that Yang Chen obtained from the Dragon Palace treasure house. It was made of the 5-element dragon tendons. Not to mention that the praying mantis was only a puppet at the peak yuanying stage. If it was really entangled, even if it was a Deshang stage cultivator, it would not necessarily be able to break free. As for the sword array, it was the 7-step enchantment array that Yang Chen stripped from the Dome Hall. This array had killed several yuanying stage masters. It was really simple to deal with Shi Shanshan. Do you have to rely on these foreign objects to defeat me? The 4th time she was defeated by Yang Chen, and her lips were also kissed by Yang Chen 3 times, but Shi Shanshan was still a little unconvinced. Well, I won't rely on these foreign objects. Yang Chen directly spread out his right hand and raised it, the 5th time. This time, it was not Shi Shanshan who took the initiative to attack, but Yang Chen. As soon as the voice fell, Yang Chen's two hands, each produced a thin flame and flew towards Shi Shanshan. The flame was purple and cyan. Although the color was strange, the flame was too thin and looked inconspicuous. It was a bit too much to call it a flame, but it was very appropriate to describe it as a fire filament. If Shi Shanshan didn't know that Yang Chen was definitely a master of fire control, she might ignore these two fire filaments. Looking at this scene, Shi Shanshan didn't dare to have any carelessness, and she stared at the two fire filaments as if she was facing a formidable enemy. Under the control of Yang Chen, the two fire filaments were slender and flexible, and they almost instantly entangled Shi Shanshan. Even if Shi Shanshan had controlled the flying sword several times, she couldn't cut off the two fire filaments. She used a few water attribute magic weapons to suppress it, but when those magic weapons touched the fire filaments, they melted like candles and didn't work at all. The two fire filaments were like ropes that trapped Shi Shanshan. Shi Shanshan had just cast another body armor. As soon as it touched the fire filaments, it was burned into a few black shadows. Until the fire filaments surrounded Shi Shanshan, making her unable to move at all, Yang Chen stepped forward again and asked with a smile, "How is it this time?" Shi Shanshan snorted coldly, but didn't say anything. Although she had already admitted that this move of Yang Chen's was absolutely unique and powerful, Shi Shanshan didn't know why, but she still didn't want to give in. Yang Chen didn't mind. He just kissed Shi Shanshan's lips again, and then shook his hand to withdraw all the flames. He took a few steps back, stretched out two fingers, and made a gesture of 6. He said, "The 6th time." Chapter 782. Unknowingly, a uniquely shaped flying sword appeared in Yang Chen's hand. It was blood-red in color, and people could tell that it was made of some kind of plant at a glance. The strange thing was that the hilt was very peculiar. A ferocious ghost head spat out the blade from its mouth, and the hilt itself seemed to be a living thing. It twisted and spiraled around Yang Chen's hand and wrist. It was very strange. Shi Shanshan was secretly surprised, but she didn't show any expression on her face. When Yang Chen picked up the flying sword, she shouted and slashed at him with her sword. This time, Yang Chen still stood in the same place. He just raised the long sword in his hand high, looked at the incoming flying sword, and slashed it down. Even with the flying sword in his hand, Yang Chen's speed was still abnormally fast. No matter how fast Shi Shanshan's flying sword was or which direction it flew from, it couldn't escape from Yang Chen's slash. With a slight sound of a sharp blade cutting through tofu, Shi Shanshan's flying sword was easily cut into two by Yang Chen's slash. With the remaining momentum of cutting the flying sword, Yang Chen's figure dashed to a place not far from Shi Shanshan. Just when Shi Shanshan summoned another flying sword, it was cut off by Yang Chen's tyrannical slash. Then, Yang Chen's sword was placed on Shi Shanshan's white neck. "Don't tell me this is your natal flying sword." Yang Chen didn't feel sorry for cutting off Shi Shanshan's flying sword. When needed, Yang Chen could give Shi Shanshan hundreds of flying swords. "You are relying on the sharpness of the flying sword. I won't accept this." Shi Shanshan's tone did not soften at all. She looked at Yang Chen with the same unconvinced gaze. Yang Chen leaned forward and his lips pecked Shi Shanshan's red lips again. He took back the blood demon vine sword held by Xiao Tian and then found an ordinary flying sword and threw it in the air. The 7th time. Yang Chen made a 7 sign with one hand, and the flying sword in the air drew a few circles in front of him, signaling Shi Shanshan to come again. Shi Shanshan took out another flying sword from her cosmos bag and controlled it to attack Yang Chen. Shi Shanshan did not resist Yang Chen's subsequent 2 light kisses. It seemed that because she was controlled by Yang Chen, she was unable to resist, but Shi Shanshan herself understood that in her heart, she seemed to have accepted such a thing. When Yang Chen kissed her for the first time, Shi Shanshan pushed Yang Chen away and then wiped her lips with her hand. But now, Shi Shanshan has no such action. Even when she was controlled by Yang Chen and her lips came up, she still had some expectations in her heart. After being defeated by Yang Chen 6 times in a row, Shi Shanshan actually had some admiration for Yang Chen in her heart. Although Shi Shanshan was still stubborn, Yang Chen seemed to have defeated her when she was in her best condition. Whether he used a foreign object or not, it seemed that he did not violate the conditions she proposed. However, for Shi Shanshan's stubbornness, Yang Chen did not mind. Yang Chen had already expected this situation. The reason why he proposed 10 challenges was because of this. He wanted to defeat Shi Shanshan in all aspects and let Shi Shanshan, this girl, be convinced by him. The appearance of Xiao Tian was not because Yang Chen wanted to use the advantage of the flying sword to win, but to use his pet to defeat Shi Shanshan. But Shi Shanshan seemed to have some misunderstandings. Yang Chen simply took back Xiao Tian and only used the imperial sword technique. Even if there was no Xiao Tian, Yang Chen's imperial sword technique under the control of his middle Deshang stage spiritual awareness, the power was not trivial. Although he did not have the idea of killing Shi Shanshan, he also wanted to make Shi Shanshan unable to bear the consequences. The flying sword controlled by the two began to meet in the air. However, every time the flying sword collided, it would cause a surge in Shi Shanshan's mind. There was a great power on Yang Chen's flying sword. As soon as it collided with Shi Shanshan's flying sword, it could always bring a little damage to Shi Shanshan's flying sword. This was not the damage to the flying sword itself, but to reduce the connection between Shi Shanshan and the flying sword. The flying sword controlled by Yang Chen was extremely fast and very flexible. While hitting Shi Shanshan's flying sword, it was always able to maintain enough offensive, so that Shi Shanshan had no time to split. She could only try to control her own flying sword to resist. However, this gave Yang Chen's flying sword more opportunities to hit Shi Shanshan. The more times they hit, Shi Shanshan found that she could no longer control her flying sword as if it was her own arm. Even her defense could not be maintained. However, Yang Chen did not give in. After a series of deliberate attacks, Shi Shanshan could no longer control her flying sword. It was directly cut off from Shi Shanshan's mind and fell to the ground with a clang. After experiencing Yang Chen's attacks, Shi Shanshan even felt that her sea of consciousness was a little swollen. While she was shocked, Yang Chen's flying sword had fallen on Shi Shanshan's neck again. How about this time? No one knew when, but Yang Chen was already standing opposite Shi Shanshan. Looking at Shi Shanshan's restrained appearance, he asked with a smile on his face. Shi Shanshan just snorted, but did not turn her face away. Yang Chen smiled and moved forward. Shi Shanshan seemed to have a guilty conscience and closed her eyes. Her lips trembled as if she had already accepted her fate. Yang Chen's lips once again kissed Shi Shanshan's red lip. This time, Yang Chen was no longer skimming the water, but stayed for a long time. When the red lips in contact were trembling violently, he separated. Still not convinced? You can rest for a while, recover, and continue. Yang Chen once again handed Shi Shanshan a calming spirit pill and a few Peiyuan pills to let Shi Shanshan rest. In the battle just now, Shi Shanshan's spiritual awareness had a certain shock, and her spiritual power was also consumed. She could only recover after a rest. Shi Shanshan did not refuse. She had now begun to look forward to the next 3 games. What means did Yang Chen intend to use to defeat her? As for the previous thoughts of throwing the game, she had already left it behind. Yang Chen was not idle when Shi Shanshan was resting, but he quickly made a pot of hot tea and poured it to Shi Shanshan. This was Shi Shanshan's favorite way to relax. A few cups of hot tea could not only restore her spiritual power, but also relax her mood. It was the most suitable thing at this time. Shi Shanshan did not refuse Yang Chen's kindness. When Yang Chen brewed the tea, Shi Shanshan had been staring at Yang Chen's every move with a very complicated look. It seemed that she wanted to see what kind of person Yang Chen was. For Yang Chen's talent in alchemy, Shi Shanshan was already full of admiration. Yang Chen became the first fifth-grade alchemist in the mortal world at such a young age. He was definitely the object of countless people's pursuit. But Shi Shanshan never thought that in the battle, Yang Chen was so powerful.